Now, all right, it's 6 p.m. I'll call a meeting to order with roll call. Nikki?
Here.
John?
Here.
Melinda?
Here.
Tiffany? You know. Jason?
Here.
Kelly?
Yes, here.
And myself this week. All right. First item on the agenda is discussion regarding possible board development and retreat.
Do we want to highlight that
Yeah.
we are recording and
So, as a reminder to anyone in the public that's watching the recording, this workshop meetings are going to be recorded and then posted later. So board meetings will be live streamed. All right. I want to open up discussion regarding possible board development and retreat. There's a couple different options available, and you can probably go in Google search and get a wide range of things. We also could table this until we have an administrator, district administrator. So I'm open to either way.
we talked about doing a 2-in-1 type deal, or at least separate and combined with the district administration group and then school board group. And workshop meeting wise, let's see, we have one of our principals here. So do we want to save this discussion for?
I would vote that we would table it. I mean, we can talk through it, but I wouldn't want to make any decision tonight. But I think it's just discussion.
Yeah. So nothing being decided, so no need for a vote.
Can you remind me what you've done in the past or what your vision is?
In past, we've done off-site retreat at Fallen Timbers, like a Saturday afternoon, and gone and done, whether it's kind of a combined personal development and awareness for other board members, and kind of where you mesh and where you might overlap on opinions or things in the way your thought processes are, or recognizing where you might have conflict. We've also done them in the school here, where we've had Lee come in, Lee Pritzel, and do a workshop with the admin team and the board, and usually he'll have some sort of, whether it's the colors, like a disc assessment, or we did a pizza one at one of the other workshops, like what fills your pizza, like what makes you motivate. We've done a couple different ones, so.
Kind of does like a Or's do's and don'ts with examples of different districts and things that are happened to give kind of a little bit of background for some things that might be like gray area.
He has written a book, so there is a book that can go along with some of his workshops or retreats. His suggestion, I have had some conversations with him, is basically we need to go through a funeral process at this point and kind of let things go and let the new admin team and board move on. So
I think it's okay. I'm not a huge fan of colors or just I've done them numerous times and you get different responses different times. And I think it's okay I just don't know that we're at that level. I think to the whole set to get together, to talk things through, to get to know each other, and that's fine. I don't know that I see the value for this group or the administrative team going through either discipline. That's just
and those are just examples of things that he's done. I think he's got a pretty large bag of tools that he's used. So.
Is there a time frame? You just thinking schedule, thinking ahead?
I want to start getting us in the, okay, like if we're looking in August, is there blackout times and there's other things that are happening? There's, it's August, not a good month, or would it be September? So just discussion at this point. We're not deciding anything. So there's
my opinion on that too. Is we don't have a district administrator go through We have 3 new administrative staff coming in, 4 new administrative staff coming in. Like, I think, let's not let them drink through the fire hose, right? Let's get them settled, comfortable with their staff, and then go to something that would be, I think it would be beneficial. I would just like give it a pause. We absolutely need to have a district administrator, at least an acting district administrator, before we go through that process. That's just my thing.
I'd agree with the pause. I think we have a lot going on right now. So I'll get a couple of things in place and then move forward.
Okay. Anything else on the topic? Alright. Move on to the next item on the agenda, discussion regarding agenda posting procedures. So really, there's a single sheet, and I do have copies if you guys want to see them, but, I just want to do some agenda item or attachments that I've seen historically, things that have been posted, and then what is posted initially public, or if it's an executive session, and then also, some of the items like staffing approval, resignations, additions, and changes, that typically historically has been in executive session. Then once we would make that motion and approve it, then we would move it into that meeting and post it to public. So I went through here. Dan's also put together on the screens here. We can follow along with their stuff that we want to discuss now.
So I think I would just say that, there's been questions regarding how agenda items are presented to the public, and specifically related to attachments on the agenda when they're in public versus executive. We want to find a balance between, the public's right to information while also allowing the board to work efficiently. We've had some instances in the past where information's been posted on the agenda under public comment and then been scrutinized without context before the board's had a chance to weigh in. So we're trying to find that balance, and the goal here is to set the standard and directions that we move forward so that there's not questions on, so basically that Sandy knows what to do, so that there's not a question of should this be public or executive, and does it get moved to public, depending on what it is, at a specific time after it's approved. So
how have we done stuff like with the stuff that we have later on in the agenda with the first group? Like, I'm okay, right? So contextually, that hasn't been, we're not voting on anything, we're just having an open discussion, right? Like, there's no context to that until we have a meeting. I'm okay for that to be an executive posting, but as soon as we have that discussion and that's going to come up for a vote, that's obviously got to be public, right?
Right.
I think contractual stuff should be kept to executive, but I'm in favor of this, as much as we can put it open and be public content. I agree with the guidelines. What have we had guidelines in the past?
Guidelines for posting.
Yes, as to where
It was done the same probably about till February, and then board docs was gone into and items were made public. So that was not a discussion among the board, that just started happening.
But what happened?
So there wasn't anything prior. It was just verbal stuff that happened, and maybe through email, and then changes happened. So there wasn't an actual procedure.
So we've never had guidelines for doing that. So now
I think it was always just understood as this is how it was. Because a lot of boards don't put things in public until they have been approved by the board. So you're not changing a document that's out to the public. Public just sees one document instead of possible changes. So once it's approved, there are items that go public. So for example, say something was posted in the meeting minutes and then it was corrected. That could be confusing to somebody in the public because we might be like, nope, that's not actually how the minutes happen. And then the public could come back and say, well, why are they changing stuff? I went back into an old board meeting and now the minutes are different. That's my concern, is that things are in there in public before they've been finalized by the board. So,
I'm sure there's gonna be exceptions to that.
Yeah.
So what would the exceptions be to that rule where we would want it public prior to board approval?
Or like, I'm thinking of examples that I've been present for. So the calendar discussion. Having those calendars as public is, I'm trying to think of like the opposite of what you're saying. Like, I understand where you're coming from. Like, yep, we don't want changes, but then everything,
No, I
what would be concrete that would be a public attachment?
think the calendar thing's a really good.
Is that a
idea,
good-
right? Because we put that out to the district anyways, to be like, hey, like, what do you think about this, right?
Mhm.
So I'm okay with that. If there's something that we're gonna put out to like a district-wide
mhm.
vote or a comment period or something like that, then I absolutely think that should be public.
I would think that could be public too. I'm more worried about things not having context being put out there, or things posted incorrectly for people to think they're being changed and not
Correct.
understand the difference of minutes being brought to the board and then approved. Because I mean, we look at them for a reason. Otherwise, why have us approve them, right? To catch any inconsistencies. So I think the calendar would be a good idea because that is something that goes out to the public. They should see it.
Okay.
You know, if they have questions, then that can happen before a vote happens.
Do you think it would be beneficial to just start at the top and kind of talk our way through each of these and decide whether we feel like it's?
Can I interject a question on, so we said we didn't have any sort of rules or anything around this previously. Do we consider this, because it's Sandy who puts the stuff together and has to follow it. So is that more administrative guidelines on how something should functionally be done? Or is it something that should be policy since it's the board and the meeting and how we want things presented out?
Well, I think it's twofold. So it's essentially the board's policies, right? For us to create it. It's our meeting, our agendas, right?
Okay.
But then it's also providing that guideline for it at the same time, because she's acting as our board clerk from the admin side of it, right? And essentially this would be like a first read as we're going through it, so
Mhm.
it's not
So I'm looking at, so board minutes, like we see them attached. The board minutes are like of previous meetings,
Mhm.
and then we vote to approve or amend them. But then they never would get posted again, right? Because we move on after that point. So if
No.
they're not,
They are posted to the website.
so
Then
but
they would be
Once they're
posted
approved,
Yeah,
public.
then they're, yeah.
so are we talking about that or are we talking about just in the board docs portal?
It would be board docs to the public though. We have executive and there's public. So
They're
there is some altering after the board meeting. Yes, typically it was the minutes and there was something else.
But they're not posted publicly again though, right? They're posted on the website, but
Yeah, not in
docs.
board docs. I mean, I would say that, you know, for 20+ years, we had the same individual as the superintendent and the same individual as the administrative assistant, and they
Just-
worked hand in hand
Yeah.
and that they did it the same way every time. And now we've had some changes and we really just wanted to get direction from you guys. And we, you know, we could fill this out and say, what do you think? Because I don't want, I want to limit, you know, I guess blame or on Sandy's part because she's just doing what she was told or what she's done previously.
Oh, yeah, I don't
And
think
if
there's-
it's something different, then let's talk about it and move
Figure it
forward.
out.
Yeah, there shouldn't be any blame for this, right? Everybody's learning and I get that. I think the other question that I have then too, right? I mean, going based off of what you said, is this something that we should table for a district administrator as well?
I don't think so. It's our board meeting. It's not the administrators meeting.
Okay.
I mean,
That
that's
was-
my thought.
Yeah,
I'm just going based off of what I just heard. So it was worked out between the superintendent and whoever was doing that. So if we want to take that ownership back, then that's fine.
And that's, I guess that's my point on it, but
Would you prefer to have us fill this out, like what we would recommend? And then bring that to you and,
Or would that just be part of the discussion now and then? at
Sure.
a-
I mean,
at
That's why I was
Another board meeting, we can digest it, then another,
Sure.
then the next board meeting, we can just vote to approve it.
Sure.
I agree, Nikki, let's just go top down.
okay, so. Board minutes, when we post the agenda. Do you want them to be in public or executive content?
I would say initially executive. We have had changes to the minutes, so that's why I say that.
Is there another way around that, that solves both problems, that says we post them publicly? And then any changes that need to be made or corrections need to be made, they just need to be noted that corrections were made. And that,
So we post a public one that's like clearly explicitly labeled draft or like not approved.
But I was gonna say, why can't we just say this is like unofficial or, you know, if you flag it as such, when that, I guess I don't know what we're trying to avoid.
yeah, our meetings are, everything's public.
Mhm.
We're recording.
Right.
To me, I think it's, we put draft or
Uh,
if we make that there's changes or unapproved or something like that, we know that.
even have like a watermark on it, so it's
Yeah.
very clear when you open it, like you're looking at the draft meetings. They aren't
Yeah.
approved.
And maybe there's a statement with it that says, minutes are subject to change.
Until approved. by-
Until approved.
Correct.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that,
Because our board minutes are public.
Is what we're saying with the watermark.
that would be my vote.
And I guess my question is like, if I'm a community member and I want to know, you know, if I'm going to look at this and I want to know what's coming up in the meeting, is there any other place to look? Even if it is a draft and it could change when I get there, but is this how I know
Well,
this,
then look
this
at
is a meeting I want to be at because they're going to talk
No,
about.
That's the agenda.
That's the
Oh,
agenda.
the agenda.
the agenda. These
Okay.
are meetings from the previous.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's like
Or
last
that we're approving.
board meeting, we approved three
Three at a
separate
time.
Yeah.
meetings, like that.
Yes.
That's a long time to not have that.
Yeah.
It should be
Yeah.
public when the agenda's posted. And with
Typically,
the
it should be.
draft.
Yeah. Or at least finding what you're looking for, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
So I'm hearing, we'll post them
Publicly.
publicly.
And clearly have it identified as
The
a draft
watermark.
copy and have a watermark.
I would say a watermark and.
Yeah.
And noted up on top.
Yeah.
These are unapproved. Unofficial, so approve that, whatever, however. it wants.
Make sense?
Now, this next one, I do agree. I thought it was quite odd that at times I was finding out about staff changes at the same time as the, like, they're being presented for us to approve or not approve or whatever, but I'm learning at the same time as everybody else. So I feel like those personnel reports should be,
Exactly.
Or contracts. that you-
I mean, yes, those are,
Contracts for sure.
For sure,
Yeah,
yes.
executive.
Well, in personnel reports too, depending on when stuff comes through, some people don't even have time to tell people they work with.
Correct.
I think that one is like a no-brainer. I think it should just be executive.
I agree.
Does that become public then following?
I think so. It gets printed in the paper, so
Following approval.
after they're approved, it's public knowledge anyways.
Okay. This would be executive.
Executive.
Exactly the same.
We're not gonna publish the contract.
They're
so
never
then
published.
Correct.
That would. So what about the bills listing?
There's
So that's-
protocol for that. Yeah, I don't know.
So it's a list of all the payments from the previous month up
Yeah.
to the date before the board meeting, and it's a list of payments and.
Is that typically a public document at any point?
Historically, when I went back to like probably 5 years ago and stuff, and it's kind of thumbing through, it has been publicly posted at all, of them, so.
Okay.
So I used to look at them before I was a little bit. You really want that Q&A?
Yeah, I know, I do. Policies, for review. I think I heard from previous questions that possibly you want that in executive.
I'm okay with that being executive, because we're gonna talk about it, it's gonna be in the meeting minutes, that'll come up. That has to get approved. So I'm okay with that being. Can we say executive for workshops, but then I don't know, do we ever have that at our regular board meeting? Do we have it?
What
Or is it
happens,
just-
our policies, once we approve them, go into the, different, the policy, so they already go public. So-
So then board docs will then format it and upload it to our policy deck.
And what's nice is, Neola, once it gets approved by us, they take care of all of that. So,
I would say we'd want this to be public, because if we're making a change to a policy, we'd want to give the public the opportunity to speak on it.
Yeah.
And they're not gonna know what we're changing if we don't make it public.
I mean, I think it goes kind of twofold, is a workshop meeting when we would just be discussing it.
Yeah,
There shouldn't be any need necessarily for executive or for public.
public, yeah.
We haven't even decided like what's the draft look like.
That's what I was getting
Yeah,
at earlier.
Right.
Yeah, I think for a workshop, it should be in the executive session, but for a regular meeting prior to approval, it should be posted, so if there's public comment and people want to come up and have a comment or
Make it a bit more
absolutely.
generic and say if discussion only, it'd be executive. If there's action to take on changing,
Sure.
it should be
I
public.
think that's great.
So I don't want to split workshop and whatnot, because sometimes we do end up making actions and stuff if needed in a workshop.
So I put that the first read, which would typically happen at a workshop, we'll put that in executive session. So that's really a draft and you guys might be making different decisions.
I like
The
that.
second read is then, it's pretty well ironed out. You still have an opportunity to say, you know what, I had a question about that. Let's change this one thing. And you can approve it with changes. But that would be public, and then the public would then have an opportunity to see that. And if they had a comment, that they would have an opportunity to talk about it.
Mhm. As long as we abide by the fact that if there's possible action to be taken, it has to be public then.
So for example, that policy that we approved at the last meeting, which we did in one fell swoop,
I would have
we
made
would
that
have that
public.
public, yeah. Okay. Those were the main items that happen monthly, and we also tried to go through some other things that they're just your typical action items that happen. You know, I did think about the school calendar. We've got class trips, things like that.
I think those are fair to be public. and
Yeah,
there's
that's
any
reasonable, be public.
Absolutely.
Privilege that needs to be reserved.
Did you want to talk specifically about any of these other items?
I think the budget documents for me and the handbook for me follow the policies for review.
They're public on the website, so.
But you're saying if there were changes going to be made.
I'm saying
Like a
that
policy.
executive first read, I'm okay with that, but then if we're gonna vote on anything, that has to be public. I
Sure.
guess that's just my.
Yes. Like for example, the budget document, you know, that's posted is a DPI format. You know, that if you just look at this without any context, you could make some
Broad assumptions.
broad assumptions about what we're doing or what's happening. So I mean, I have a presentation that goes along with it that we'll talk about later to kind of walk you through, you know, what this is and what it all means. So I wouldn't necessarily want that document out there before I've had a chance to talk about it with you.
And that makes sense. That seems to follow the policy and procedure. However, then it come at October meeting where, right, you referenced that we have to make that public.
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Is anybody disagree with that?
I think the handbook could be public. It's public, period. So the handbook, I'm not,
Change it though? Or, like if there was a proposal
To make a change, yeah. Does that proposal be public right away or does that come to us first as executive?
it typically wouldn't necessarily come to us, I don't think.
It says the administrator that owns the handbook.
Very few changes are made to the
Yeah.
handbook, and it's I mean, you can go on our district.
Right.
website.
Yeah, and see it,
Yeah.
Well, you go to all the website and look at all the policies too, right? It's when we're making changes, you
Yeah,
know, that change to the.
I would say that there's no reason for that not to be
Okay.
public. It's kind of like the calendar. You can make changes to the calendar even though it's out there, but it's nothing.
And if we're gonna make a change, that would probably come under that policy for review, right?
Mhm.
Probably.
So, yeah, I'm definitely.
What about student handbook?
I think that's public too.
Those are already posted out there as well.
Yeah.
Staff and student, the same.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can go with it too.
But yes, they would approve of it.
Those were the items that I thought of off the top of my head, looking at a few past agendas.
Yes, I'm trying to think, like in my head, anything that's a resource, anything that would be to help us gain knowledge, like all of that should be public. I'm trying to like kind of set that criteria and like what makes it executive? Well, I think I mean, you have to think about what information is being shared, right? Like any personal identifying info, again, we get to contract, I'm trying to kind of
But if you.
create
look at
that
I
separation.
think The majority of that we have here.
Right, and just again, moving forward, like if things come up, ask ourselves like, well, if it's a resource
Yeah.
to gain knowledge, that can be shared, or I don't
So
know.
what would be the path forward if something comes up and there's a question?
Like whether to post it executive or
Yeah,
not.
can we just say it would go to Rain and then Rain would just collect in a non-reply all situation, whatever the responses are?
I think in the short term, yeah.
Yeah, does that sound
Yeah.
fair? Because then that covers that, Nikki. That's a good point because there's a gray area. Just get an answer.
What about, I hope it doesn't have to happen again, but we had the interviews a few months ago. I think we had all the, cover letters and resume stuff. Was that an executive, right? Was that public? No,
I
it's
think it was
public.
all public,
I think
yeah.
that was public, and I
It
think
was public.
That
I mean,
was,
is
yeah,
that felt a little odd.
I
Yeah.
posed that question because you have people, I know it's a public position now, but you're giving away
A lot of
a
information,
lot of
especially if you
information
aren't
for somebody
selected.
that potentially would not,
Yeah.
might not get the position.
I agree. I think that
So
to
that-
me,
Again, that personal identifying information,
Yeah,
kind of
and I
line.
would have no problem if the PII was redacted from it, but I don't.
That's a good point too, yeah.
If PII is redacted, then post it.
yeah. I would say like, you want the cover letter to be public, that's fine. I don't think the resumes need to be.
I don't think so either.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think
I don't know. I have a weird feel about that. I feel like
Yeah.
when you go to an interview for your job, that's not posted publicly for the
No.
whole community to. I
The
think
fact
it
that
should
the
just
interview
stay
has to be
executive.
public was.
Yeah. Your thoughts, Kelly? I mean, you just went through it, so.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, if I think about, again, applying for a job in the general public, you may not want people to know you're applying
if
for.
you're running for public office, right, people can ask what you've done and where your job skills are and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So that's where I'm like, if the PII is redacted, like I was a huge fan of only living out there and stuff like that, it's my personal email address, but if that's redacted, then you're essentially running for public office.
Yeah, no, as far as I don't have anything to hide, so I guess that wouldn't bother me, but if I'm thinking about, I'm being on the other half of it, like as an employer, somebody that comes to apply for a position, like, it's kind of confidential, like.
Yeah.
So just thinking about that in general, I realize public office is very different, but in the same token, like you said, protecting, do you want everybody to have your phone number?
Well, and I think too, like the newspaper asks you what information you provide it. When we just post it, you kind of miss that opportunity to
To have a say.
have a say in your information. So, and maybe some employers don't want to be listed. I mean, not in a bad way, but maybe it's just like, you know, I don't know. It's just a thought.
Another thing I've found looking back at old meetings, or open enrollment items. Maybe had postings and stuff about students, number of students.
Well, then that wouldn't identify any students. So
No, yeah, it's all
anything
redacted out. I don't
Anything
know.
related to students would not be shared. But summary reports, like how many students in, how many students out, that kind of thing.
So I feel it's all fair to be
Yeah.
public and everything. I don't know if we wanted specifically, that's something that would pop up here and here.
Position descriptions, so say we're adding a position or a new role or redefining a position of some sort.
That's
Informational, right?
Prior to approval or after approval?
I would say you have it out there before you make a discussion. Like, if prior, like, so I think, you know, you can even just go to like the director of teaching and learning, like there was, everybody could see like kind of like what the job description was. So that everybody kind of started with the same information. That's nothing that the public, I think they can see that.
That'd be good.
Mhm.
All the changes we talked about. Service contracts.
That would all be public.
District goals before they're set.
So
Executive first read and second read will be public.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Reporting information for action, so in the, like additional staffing or building improvements, things before we would even be bringing them for a vote.
I think that's a first read, second read type.
Sorry, what was the topic?
the supporting.
Like supporting information for actions. Like say when we were doing the additional classroom last summer, right? So before we would approve that, would all that information be out there or would it be, okay, until we're actually going to action on it?
Topics?
We kind of covered. Can you think of anything on or that came up that you felt like was changed? Or like posted differently at some point than it was, like, I mean,
So I feel like maybe I kind of said it,
yeah,
but I'm not always clear, I feel like so, the biggest ones that I noticed that were started, staffing is the thing.
the staff.
I noticed things before when the staffing was the thing that alerted me and I was like, oh boy. Cause we literally were finding out and being asked questions before
Even had a meeting.
it was
Yeah.
approved, yeah, so, and then meeting, and I know some agendas previously, like if you go back, they all look similar now. So whenever the change happened, it was then
Okay.
done to other board meeting, board docs. It was really just the meeting minutes, monthly bills listing. I thought we approved that first, but, and then it was on there, but I'm whatever, fine with that. And then some of the just actionable items were already out there and I'm not, just to be clear, like I'm not opposed to how it's being happening, except for the staff. I don't
Sure.
want people to get it announced and then they're not,
Correct.
haven't told people yet. Or,
Or you find out about it at the grocery store and you're like, hey, you hired a new principal. Oh, yeah, really.
So, do you think that we've covered everything?
Admin, Eric, anything from
Yeah, I
previous
think everything
experience?
It's a really good start.
Sandy, is there anything that you can think of that we haven't hit?
I think the only one that doesn't really sit well with me, and I know it was unique, was the whole cover letters. Like, I just don't know. I remember feeling like that was funny too, that everyone has access to this.
And TJ,
But who knows if I'll ever have that scenario again? I mean, in
Let's
no
hope we
other
don't.
position.
well, let's hope we don't, but if we do, let's just have a
oh,
policy.
let's talk about that a little bit, because the process that was followed was different than when I say we've, I wasn't on the board, but what we've as a board previously did. So,
Did
that
we-
was not the same process that was followed when it was needed before.
Okay,
So the letters, the interviews, everything was done differently.
then do we want to put an agenda item out for a future workshop to talk through if that scenario happened again? How would the board want to handle it? Would it be like a questionnaire type thing? Would it be an interview process that just happened?
Well, I think we have a policy.
I was just gonna say, I think there is a.
It just wasn't,
Okay,
I can't say that it wasn't followed. It was,
So maybe we just need another workshop to
Different.
revisit that
just to
policy.
put that
and-
on the agenda,
yeah.
just to revisit that policy.
Yeah.
I'm okay. If we have a
I just
policy.
feel like
let's
if that
just do it.
were, it wasn't clear. The process wasn't clear, I don't think, to anyone who applied at that time or was
I'm not
interested.
sure if it was communicated.
Like, did
There's
you
a
know?
policy. I don't know that it was communicated.
I've seen it happen a couple times over my career and it's been handled differently every time, so.
Okay.
I think we
I like
just need to decide how
policies.
we're gonna do it
Yeah.
and.
Yeah.
And
I'm
then,
like, board with policy.
I mean, your job is to set up the board in the future to
Yeah,
have something.
For sure, yeah,
And in that case, if they decide that they don't want that anymore, then they make that decision.
right.
But for this conversation, I mean, even in that moment, I don't know how I feel about their letters of interest or cover letters being a public attachment.
By revisiting the policy,
We
we
should,
can maybe put that in the policy.
So I have
I
a,
hear you completely. I'm just saying, but then let's just handle it completely as a policy, but I don't think we can't take it out there. We didn't have it on the agenda.
Yeah.
That's all.
the only other thing that I had was the administrative reports. One, I think, if, what a district superintendent, principal, business manager, director, student services, director, curriculum, IT, food services, building grounds, right? So workshop meeting, our board meetings in general, we get a nice update from the admin team. District superintendent typically have theirs attached in executive session for us to see beforehand. The updates that they get, because they're already doing notes, is that something that we want to see put out?
Are you saying you want to see the admin teams before, like? they're
No,
attached
not before. I'm saying like, once you do read them, like, you got them already, just post them, can we post
to-
them?
Yeah, so I send mine to Sandy, and then I don't know what happens to them when I send them to Sandy. I know. Because I always just, I mean, that since I've been here, you always just sent them to like either Marion or Hillary or Sandy, and I don't know what happened to them after that.
Does it go
in the board packet then?
Then are they in your minutes?
I think Hillary would kind of summarize, what Sarah talked about or whoever talked about. So it's not, especially when Craig talks, it's every sport and everyone, so, it would be, Craig Hayes gave an update on,
Yes.
the football team or whatever.
That's what I meant to do.
fact, right?
So you
That is
meant to-
after the fact,
9
yes,
minutes, they
yes.
do that.
So,
I mean, I've only been present for a few meetings, but we've never seen any of those attached, or, you know what I mean? So they go, right.
I don't have any attachments. Cause I mean, I mean, true honesty, like I write those normally during the meeting.
Just great.
We've never written any of them.
I know.
I literally just start talking about all the stuff that we've been doing and it's just.
I think more, not that we need them for any, I just think the information you have shared in the past is amazing, and I feel like it should be celebrated on a wider
Documented
scope.
and,
Yeah.
So if there was documentation, like even if someone's taking notes of it, I don't know, but I think that would be a great piece of our meetings to somehow get out to the bigger
Do you
community.
need it beforehand or?
That has nothing to do with,
The
well, for
reason I
me,
say that too, is I guess I'll just say it, is that like this meeting right now is being transcribed.
Mhm.
And I transcribe almost every single board meeting as long as it's recorded in any way, shape or form, which means that it's a lot to transcribe, but we could run it through a summarizer. So you can kind of put that out there as long as the summarizer, as long as the
I think-
information seems to be accurate, someone reads the summary. Yeah.
I think it's the summary
yeah,
of what's put out there, just the highlights. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be,
it does not have to be word for word.
Detailed.
especially when it
it's
gets to cracks. but-
I know, somewhat off topic, but you've been talking about wanting to do like a newsletter or something like that. Those are great things to have available to fill the newsletter.
So, I mean, what could happen is that this is a particular board account, it gets emailed at the end of the meeting, a whole entire transcript, it's sometimes like 40 pages long because it's
Yeah.
interpreting every word that's been said during the meeting. But then what can happen is that you can run it through Gemini, which is our local AI that does not get shared out. So,
Clean it up
and then you could just say, please summarize this section. And then that would create the quick summary. Takes them a minute or two to read that summary and that'll be.
Sarah's
I don't know,
thinking, I've been doing this all along. and I could've
No,
been
please.
somewhere."
So exceeded, AI could have done this?
What is it? I mean, all of us come with something like typed up, or we type it at that
Yeah.
point, right? And then, so in the past, we'd always give it to Hillary. I think everybody sent them to Hillary, and so now Sandy will keep them. I mean, she could just copy, paste them all into like a
Gemini.
Google, like, something, and be like, summarize it, here you go, and then it'd all be in one place for you, like, all right, here's what, the principal said, here's the, the different.
But Gemini is just in our instance though.
So the license that we have for Gemini is not being read publicly because it is part of a enterprise education deployment. And so the license that we have, like no information is, no human, no, it's not trained with our data and it's also not read by humans at Google. If you get what I'm saying. That is-
No, I do, so, but other districts can see it.
No,
No.
we literally, I guess what I'm saying is that like sometimes people get scared of AI
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it's being used to train other
Yeah.
systems and it's also being used to train sometimes employees of companies that write the AI.
Yeah.
Or that engine. So ours is exempt from
Okay.
other eyes that don't belong here. And it's also exempt from learning about it, how to be a better AI from our information.
Oh.
I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, so it stays here because of our particular license. It's not the same as using Gemini if you had an @gmail.com
Okay.
account. Totally different
So-
set of laws and rules and that kind of thing.
Can I propose that for the next workshop, there be a discussion about doing a newsletter, because that would be timely, it would be right before the start of school. And then possibly this stuff could then get included into that.
Yeah, and I was thinking, for
Newsletter.
this conversation, I don't want to make more work for a minute, like, we don't need to see, I don't need to see what you have to say ahead of time, I love listening to you guys. But I would love to be able to go back, and with you all knowing that, like, wow, that was a great celebration of these kids or this group, and like, get that out there somehow,
Mhm.
so if there's some type of documentation for that purpose.
So then we put the summary out on public content.
Yes, that's what I was just gonna say. That
Yeah.
could be put on board docs after the meeting.
It's non-existent before the meeting, so it's public after.
Yeah. No extra work on your end,
That
just
would be
like a way to house it somehow or capture it.
It's just, if the objective is just to get a summary, we can figure out internally. how to
We'll
get
figure
Like, can you literally
Yeah.
open a
Yeah.
Google Doc and hit the voice?
It's
Yeah, something.
all typed up.
We'll figure it out.
We'll work on that.
As long as the objective, the end result is you would like a summary of all of those, right, at the end to
Mhm.
publish. I think
Like the
we can-
highlights.
Yeah.
The
we can
highlights of
figure
the
out a quick
elementary,
highlight.
middle, high school. That's
For all the reports, that'd be cool.
And then that's for the next board meeting. correct?
Add it to our meeting.
Next workshop or next board meeting?
Board meeting.
Board
As long as board
Well,
meetings, usually those are given at board.
At the board
meetings.
meeting,
Just wanna
right.
make sure I'm clear, so.
So in 2 weeks, you want to do that.
I don't know. So then the next time we have a board
The
meeting.
newsletter is the workshop.
So yes, let's put that, admin agenda.
Look at that, how we connected some dots there and just made it happen.
And the district superintendent's report then goes where?
Say it again, I'm sorry.
The district administrators?
So the superintendent report,
Well, that
Because
could be
Brady
the-
had said that
could be the
was-
same thing,
Same.
yeah,
Well, that one was always an executive.
that one always
session.
executive first.
Executive content.
But was there a purpose or a reason why?
So that we could see the summary if we had questions beforehand, so
Okay.
that we're not coming into a meeting and then
Ask.
going, well, I have questions about this, and this.
These things, okay.
Or if they're, like a lot of times it could be documentation that's grabbed,
okay,
so that can be asked ahead of time and then maybe addressed in the meeting.
Or like-
If anybody else has
yeah,
a question.
Links and things, got it.
does that have to stay? Well, I suppose his summary would end up in the other summary, right? So it would be the public portion.
You know, I feel like it stayed.
I think it also.
I figured his document stayed
because some of it
executive,
Had to do with staff names.
correct, but like
resignations.
what he says would end up being included in the AI generated summary. Yeah.
Any other topics?
Those were all the ones I had.
Okay.
Perfect. Everyone good on that? Posted procedures?
Yeah.
Okay. Next topic is discussion regarding changes to policy 0172 legal counsel. That was the one that the Neola get back on.
Yes. So, long story short, if we change the current policy to something more specific because of what's happened in our district, Neola doesn't necessarily stand behind if something were to happen. However, Jeff Lacey is through, works with Neola and the current legal that we have. And he sits on their board. And so I sent an email to both he and Chad with the policy after talking to Wcsd, this per his suggestion. And having him look at the possible added verbiage, because he even might have created what Wcsd had as their example. And so he would give his opinion on that. So he's working on that.
Okay.
But
So Melinda, can you clarify then in our attachment, we are seeing, just so I'm understanding, page 1 is current language,
yes,
Yeah.
page 2 is what we want to add,
yes.
Yes, that was the proposal.
the proposed, and then what the concern is that if we change, they won't
He didn't
stand
say-
behind it.
No, he didn't say it wasn't, he didn't say it was a concern. He just said that Neola does not, support, was his word, customized district language. He said it is out there.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean that it's not legal or anything. That's why they have legal counsel on staff. He just said that the process would be to go through Jeff and then see if he feels there's any issues. So other districts have custom policies. Neola just doesn't automatically rubber stamp them.
So what is 3?
3 is Wasby.
Has Wasby language
suggested-
at the bottom, or
Yep. Wasby suggested.
So 3 and 4 are that, and then what's 5?
That's the proposed, essentially the copy of policy 0172 on the proposal from.
That's what would just be like alphabet.
Okay, so 1 is the current policy, 2 So 2 and 5 are the same.
Essentially,
Pretty much.
yeah.
Yeah, it looks like the
Yeah,
paragraphs.
that's
Two,
Yeah.
two is what I wrote up.
Okay.
And then 5 is what it looks like if it goes into
Okay.
plan.
Okay.
Neola.
So 5 is what we should focus on.
So this was
what we
like
would approve
after-
or not.
After,
Because I read through all this and it's a good question. So that's where adding all that.
No.
Okay.
Okay, so we're just waiting for their recommendation then. Okay,
I mean, the caveat to that is with Neola, us purchasing that, you get some reassurance
Mhm.
legally binding to their policies as long as you're following them.
Got it.
So,
Thank you for that update.
Yes.
all right. Next, anything else on the legal?
I'm good on that one.
Yeah. I'm assuming that is next, right?
Yep. Next is, IT Synergy Audit Update number 2. Excited.
This will show up with the 3 monitors. How's up there?
Weak signal.
Or,
It's popping.
I've done this on a Chromebook before, so we'll see how that works. Which screen was it? Maybe fantastic. All right. So the last time, I can't recall how many of you were present as a board member the last time that we did this, so it would have been in April. So I don't remember, but everybody was the same group. But at one point in time, we decided to do an audit with Hartman Business Solutions. And so the agreement that I had with Ron at the time was that I needed to give 4 of these updates during that audit. So I'm trying to fulfill that agreement still, and it hasn't been that long since April. So there's going to be some updates, but not everything. So basically, a recap of April. This is the kind of a graphic of that process. This is sort of where we were as Wrightstown, and we're basically right there. So we're not much farther than we were before. We've documented a number of things, but we haven't put everything in place. So a very quick recap then of what we do in tech services. These are the 6 components essentially that we're responsible for, from 1 being all the way back where no one looks to 6 being all the things that you're touching right now to make sure that you can run a board meeting, right? And everything in between. So in that process, the recap of April, we talked about these 4 things: power supplies, identity management, which some of you have done some of this with the board as well. By the end of July, we will have everyone moved over to Duo for 2-factor authentication, and we are switching a lot with students over the course of the summer as well to try to make sure that things are more single sign-on and in a better place. I'll talk about power supplies in a minute. Emergency notification systems, we now have those all set up and connected at the moment. We need to meet as an administration team. So I've tested them to make sure they're all working now, but I don't want to turn them on at this point in time because all the principles are different. So I kind of need to talk about what it looks like. And so people aren't used to them working, so they accidentally bumped the buttons in the past and nothing happened. Now, if they bump them, it will sound everywhere in every single classroom, and every phone will sound and all that kind of thing. So before I push the yes button on that, I want them to all to know, like, when you touch that this time for fun, it's not fun anymore. So like, stop it. Yeah, and they need to understand what's happening. And so we're also moving, we talked about Parent Square last time. That's moving over to the elementary school. Actually, everyone's been moving that way. We're getting rid of Seesaw. We had a pretty successful meeting. Sarah helped us set that up with the elementary school. They ended up we got someone from Parent Square to come all the way here. That person ran the training before they went to Green Bay. Pretty successful situation there. And then now everybody's kind of ready for what's going to happen, but they need to be trained again in August to actually do the how-to. So they felt pretty good, I think, about the end of that. Power supplies, this is already an older picture because we built some carts to get them off the floor, but you can see that the old one was there with all the dented stuff with the battery acid and so on and so forth. The new ones are there, and they're redundant and hooked up to 2 different power supplies. In this case, this is the power supplies about the entire thing. We do have them on carts now, and Matt did a good job of building those. So what's coming up next is, of course, switch replacement. so that we don't have what happened to the battery happen to our core switches, we are replacing those because they're end of life in October. So those were replaced on July 21st through the 23rd. We will have some internet outages at that point in time. We've been planning it for months, but those core switches will be in place. It's a huge project. It's nearly $50,000 worth of equipment that's being installed on that particular day. And it literally is every packet of information that goes to the internet travels through those core switches in our district. So it's a pretty important one. Network access control, we're going to talk about that because we don't have good network access control. So one of the things that came out in our audit is, well, what do we want to do with this? And it's not free. So we have to talk about it. Physical security is another situation that I wish I could say we're doing an awesome job in. And in some places we're doing a really nice job in, but there are still some challenges that came through the audit. So we'll talk about those and then some things we've done with cybersecurity too to help us out. So talk about the core switch replacement. Why are we doing this? Largely it's because it's end of life, right? We want to replace them before it all fails so that we don't have a situation like we did with the batteries, right? So these are much more high performance. They're ready to handle a considerable amount of additional bandwidth. I'll put this in the third audit when it's actually finished, but we have successfully completed part of a grant that's part of the Department of Administration. So we have a 1 gig coming into our entire district right now. We will now have 2 gigs coming in, and it will be exactly the same cost. And so we've applied for that in November. I was able to apply for that before I started working here. Luckily, I had an account so we could get it in before the due date before Thanksgiving. And so got that in, and then we have now been confirmed that we are going to be a part of that. And so we'll have double the bandwidth for our district. It's not redundant, but at least we'll be in very good shape as we barely hit. We really don't even hit a gate most of the time right now. So we'll have that installed, I guess, in the future, which is really nice. These are much more successful as far as security. In addition, they're ready for more Internet of Things and all the different things. Everything's starting to get connected to the internet, so we need to have some more flexibility. What we're lacking right now is network access control in a considerable fashion. So right now we don't have a guest network at all. It's just called students. And so we don't have any policy that tells people how they should use our internet. We don't really have a really good way of controlling any public devices that come into our internet. We don't have a quality of service on our internet right now. So I don't want to say too many things aloud about what could potentially happen. But there are some things that we've gotten lucky that haven't happened that could very easily happen at the moment, right? So when people come in publicly, and we have our devices that are the ones that I've given to you, that students have and all that kind of thing, our printers, everything else, they all share the same quality of service. And what that means is that if a bunch of kids or a bunch of individuals came in with some on the guest network, they get the same preference of bandwidth as our security cameras do. That's not good. So we don't want that. We want to be able to set up quality of service. We want to be able to tell like, oh, that device in the network, that's not ours. So put it over here so it can't get over here where all the stuff is that we don't want it to touch, right? So we don't have that, and that is a challenge. We VLANed a lot of things. That's what you're looking at right there. The graphics just there to help you understand conceptually. The little part there that's as an example is kind of saying, here's the current names of all the networks we have, and here's what we're attempting to do and why over on the side. It's not going to be free to do this, and we don't have necessarily all the hardware that we need to have. If we don't have a network access control product that can help balance this, I guess, at this point in time, for lack of a better word. So it's not going to fit in the budget necessarily at the moment, so we'll have to have some discussions, and that's part of what an audit does, is to learn what's there, what you need, and I don't have a solution for this at the moment. There are access points that you can buy that if you have all of them the same throughout the entire school district, you don't have to buy a separate network access control. However, that means all of your access points need to be replaced in every single room. Literally every room, there's multiple in the gyms, and there's some outdoors, there's hundreds of them. So, you know, we can wait for a while until those all become end of life, and then try to use E-rate to gain a 60 or 70% on that one. But that's all up to whether the federal government also allows E-rate to continue to exist. It's been looking good, but we don't have any E-rate money left, and we don't know if we're ever going to be issued E-rate money again. So kind of a dilemma to put in.
So are the employees here, is that also the students?
It's any device that touches the internet right now. So right now, what Matt and I do, or what the IT, sorry, what are we talking about?
How you said you want to have the network access control.
Yes.
Right? Or you want to have guests separate from employees, which is separate from IT.
Yes. So essentially, what we want to do in this case, you have like internal access right here.
Yeah.
And right now, what internal access does, and the way that it's working, is super old-fashioned, right? And I'll start with the staff one. Let's give you this one. The staff one was compromised a few months ago. and it was compromised. It's so easy to compromise. It's probably already compromised again. And there's nothing that I'm going to ever be able to do about it unless we have network access control, because what you have to do is that when staff members get a password, so pretend someone comes to your house, right? They're like, hey, I'd like to get on your network. What's your password? That's exactly what we do right now with the staff network. We literally give it to them. And so when a kid comes with their own device and they're like, hey, I'd like to be on the staff network. Staff member gives them the password. I have no idea who gave it to him, how they gave it to him, why they gave it to him, or how it was accessed, but they do. It's not a sustainable way to share. You get what I'm saying? So
I get what you're saying. I'm asking, where do students fit into that picture?
So students right now, they are placed. I wish I could tell you. It's all over the place. Depends on what device they're on. It depends on how they're logging in and all that.
Their school
Because I don't see a
devices should
network
be,
access control.
Yep.
I don't see anything for students. My question is, where would they be?
So right here, it says WCSB students.
Yeah.
That's where I would like them to be. I'd like them to be completely isolated from the internal network. And I would like to make sure that there's no possibility, there's no way for them to get a password, because a password doesn't matter. It won't allow them to get on there if it's not been a device that's been configured by us in our hands. So we can force them right now to students in the devices that we give them. However, if the network is broadcast, the other ones that they get to and so on and so forth, and they know the credentials for it, it's possible for them to get on the other ones in ways that we don't want them to get. So we do start them over here. Most of the time they'll stay there. Elementary kids are not so savvy. They never move from there.
Yeah.
But your high school kids and the kids that really just want to break stuff and learn how to get to things, they figure that out really, really quickly.
Yeah, no, I'm saying in your picture, right? Because you want
Oh,
to get, you got
sorry.
guests.
This picture, let me just say,
Okay.
I was short on time. I just grabbed a picture.
Okay.
It kind of gives you an
I
idea
got
of that.
you.
Well, that picture is completely useless and it's just for fun.
Okay.
So it gives you an idea of what network access control is, because some people are like, I'm scared, I don't know what these words mean. So like, that's just like it's a random picture from AI generated image of network access.
You got it.
No, so the literal thing over here that I don't have any picture of is this chart, and I didn't go to and make art out of our chart. So
Yeah.
that chart is the literal what I was looking for. That picture is like, I don't know what he's talking about when I say network access control. It means I want guests and kids and adults and cameras and other things to be very segmented based on their importance.
For sure.
That kind of thing. So I shouldn't say importance, but you get what I'm saying, based on their role.
Yeah, and we would, with the network access control, then there would be priority rules too as to who would be.
It would give us an unbelievable amount of
Yeah.
information to say, for example, there's so many options for it. We just don't have a lot of options right now. We could even get to the point of saying like, hey, we could do it based on MAC address. So if it's not registered in
Right.
the MAC address list, can't be in there.
Right.
And therefore, no matter what you do with it, it's not going to be on the network that is internal. You know, there's like, it just gives you tons and tons of options, and we don't have those options right now to do that. So we're doing the best we can with what we have. Right,
I got
and so right now we use access points that are made by a company called Ruckus. They're good access points to gain internet, but our switches are from Cisco, and the things talk to each other a bit. But the wireless part of it, they don't have anything built into Ruckus that we own right now that does this. So if you buy from if you buy Cisco and Word, they have network access control within it, it's built in. They also have it from HP. So you get kind of how if this is making sense a little bit, but that we're just limited in our options, right? So kind of figuring out what we have, and I don't want to rip and replace pretty good stuff. You get what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's a dilemma. I'm not asking for action. I just want to let you know that that there are. The longer that we do this, the more we connect more things. So for example, when we talk about IoT, it starts getting a bit more dangerous because you want to be able to monitor your heating systems, your cooling systems, and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, put them on the internet, become accessible in places that they used to not be accessible because you used to have to walk into a room to physically see how warm it was. You know, and that kind of
Do we have a DMZ or anything with a firewall that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So there
So
are
there's some.
there's segmentation, there's VLAN segmentation, there is some, we've done all what we can,
Yeah.
right? So for example, the IoT things are sitting in the DMZ, they are segmented to a degree that is very challenging to get to. But again, I don't know, you're at some level of risk in most places at this size with this number of devices have network access control because you've made massive investments and you use this final stage to protect those investments.
So what are the chances our kids are getting like their phones on the network? If they have a password, they're getting on.
They're on the staff,
Oh,
network
absolutely.
they're on the staff network all the time. And I hate it, but I don't know, I truly don't know what to do with it. It's like, you
Yeah.
know,
And when we have a guest come into the district,
so guests
Literally
right now
just giving
go on
them
to
a-
students.
Mhm.
and then you give them a password to connect.
And no, they just go on students immediately with nothing. It's
With
just
nothing?
wide open all the
So
time.
students isn't password protected either.
Not at all. It's actually just not password protected at all. There's no
Right.
password of any kind that is on students at the moment. It does not bring up a splash page to say that,
Uh-huh.
like, hey, you need to follow our policy now that you're on our internet. So we can, through the Palo Alto, we can put out something under the students one to say you need to follow our policy at the very least. We could get a splash page like that or whatever, but that still doesn't necessarily prevent the access that we're kind of worried about in certain areas.
I know we're talking about access here, and access has a place in it. How, with that changing to 2 gigs, does that give the Wi-Fi better capabilities and better connections?
So all that does is, we're in Green Bay, so picture what it was like at the Lambeau before there were 5 lanes, right? So it doesn't necessarily make the road, how can I get a better analogy? Doesn't make your car fast, it makes more things available.
Mm,
It's
You get a wider
wider,
pipe.
bigger pipes, you know what I mean? More water can flow through the pipe,
So
so.
we're not improving.
It's a bigger
Wi-Fi.
doorway.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
can
yeah.
get
It
more
used to be a
people
1 inch,
door.
well, let's go
Yeah,
plumbing, right? It used to be a 1 inch pipe, now it's a 2 inch pipe, and so a lot more water can flow through a 2 inch pipe than can flow through a 1 inch pipe. Not necessarily
just
better
say like
quality,
a-
not necessarily more secure. It's just you have, if we need to put more through it and we need higher quality, we have more devices, like, hey, we need to connect. Every kid now needs 2 devices for some. I'm not saying that this is happening. It's just, it allows you to have more flow through, you know, at a much greater.
Does it would improve the quality somewhat then, right?
Speed.
Quality
Speed is
and
what I'm saying, yes. Connection.
not necessarily, because, you know, I mean, again, to a degree, it's hard to explain all of this, but if your access points don't have the right throughput, your cables, there's too many variables in this. It's a good thing, but it does not determine from endpoint to endpoint all the quality.
Network access doesn't.
No, the having 2 gigs of bandwidth
Oh,
does
that-
not necessarily improve. I think that was your question.
Yeah.
So that doesn't necessarily improve the quality all the way across, because you need to make sure the cables are good, everything between where the internet starts to the user on the other end, you know? So for example, if you brought a phone that is 10 years old here with a 2.4 gigahertz radio in it, it's not gonna go faster.
Right.
Because you have better bandwidth, because 2.4 can't go as fast as 5 or 6 or 7, right? So it's based on the device right now,
Yeah.
not how good your network is. So all those things have to match each other across the network. I hope that makes sense. I mean, I was an English teacher.
It does.
So I'm trying.
You mentioned previously, we have Cisco switches currently, are the new ones also Cisco?
Everything is Cisco from the switching side,
Yeah.
and then
Okay.
the Palo Alto is the firewall, but all the access points across the district are Rockets. And
Okay,
so
and how are
largely, this is
those-
a problem when it comes to wireless access. So
Yeah.
that's usually where you're having devices floating around that you don't know, like, are you supposed to be here, and where are you supposed to be? And without some of that visibility too, you don't necessarily even know what devices are on your network. You know that there's devices on your network and there's traffic and that kind of thing, but it's also very difficult to identify who's what and where. The devices that we roll out are very easy to identify, but devices that we haven't rolled out would be incredibly difficult to identify because there's just not the right visibility tools to exist.
How old are the existing endpoints?
I can't remember. They have a few years left on them, probably 2 to 3 years left on the,
Okay.
until they, actually maybe even 4 years left until
4
they're
years.
considered totally end of life. That's kind of the dilemma. It's like,
Yeah,
it's not
But that,
really
like,
enough
halfway
yet.
point type
Yeah,
deal,
right,
right?
right,
Yeah.
right. So, I don't want to spend a ton of money on a network access control. I'm basically bringing this to you is that, like, you know, this is a dilemma that we have. It's something that usually you would see in an organization of our size. I've waited a while because I also wanted to see how the Supreme Court would rule on E-rates and whether or not that was going to continue to be a thing that's available. It is, has been considered something that the Supreme Court says is something that they can do, that the government can do, but then it's now up to the FCC to decide, are we going to continue offering this to libraries and schools across the country? And so the next time that we would receive that, as far as I know, I'm probably wrong about this, with not an E-rate professional, but I think it's 2026 of next year. Next year is when it was supposed to be refreshed. They do it about every 5 years. And so everybody's radar was like, hey, we have to have this spent by the end of 2025. Ours is already spent, so we have no more E-rate dollars. You know, and it's possible we could get a pretty good sum of money in next year at this time, but I have no idea.
Do you know how much we got last time?
I don't know offhand, I'm sorry.
That's fine.
When I came here, it was all gone already. I did check that. We have an E-rate consultant group through CISA 11. We pay for E-rate consultancy through CISA 11. And I met with them back in November. And so I could look that up for you. I just don't have it available off the top of my head. But I believe it was between 60 and 70% reimbursement for qualified purchases. And so category 2 purchases are almost all the things we're talking about in this audit. And a lot of those things would be meaning that we would front the money 100% to start with, and then we would get 60 or 70% of the reimbursement up to a certain amount that they would tell us we can spend. And then you have a period of time to do that. It's generally how it's been done.
Are there grants that you can go out and get for this kind of stuff?
There are, they're hard to get because everyone across the country needs them, or the world truthfully needs them. My only issue with some things related to grants, and like, I like analogies. So let's say that you needed heart surgery and you also needed to maintain what happens after your heart surgery, and someone helped you with the grant to give the heart surgery, but you couldn't afford to maintain your heart after that. You get what I'm saying?
Yep.
And so it's like, it's not that I don't want to get the grants, that I'm lazy. Grants are good. Grants are good. At the same time, if you buy too nice of stuff or too good of things that you cannot sustain in 5 years, what happens when you don't have the money anymore? So I'm trying to figure out how we can do this with what we have. And if we get a grant, awesome. Then we can like subsidize it for a time, but it would be nice to, even with E-rate, a lot of places it's been going on for so many decades that people are starting to budget assuming that it's going to be there, but truly at any point in time, the FCC can go like, no, 60% of your network budget is just gone now. And it's up to you to figure it out.
Right.
And that can happen truly any time. So I think the smart way to budget is try to figure out what is necessary, what we really need. And if we can try to budget it with what we need, and then if we can get a grant to like subsidize it each time, that'd be great, but probably not trying to assume that we're going to.
Sure.
I don't know. That's just my thought, I suppose. So same thing with security when DOJ did their security grant. A lot of places, that was 2018, a lot of places bought all their cameras and door access with it, and they're all too old now, need to be replaced. And they can't replace them because there's no more DOJ grant. So they're losing cameras, losing door access and stuff like that because they never had the money to do it to begin with. The DOJ threw a lot of money out at that time and everybody took it. There's no more. So.
Right,
Okay.
can I ask one more question?
Absolutely.
I'm just trying to read. So currently, there are filters. So even though we can't separate, so everyone accessing that student network, they still have a
Yeah,
filter?
so filtering is different than all
Yep.
of this. And so
Okay, I was
fil-
just
so-
reading
no,
like
that's all
though
right.
that
That's a good question.
your
So
policies
filtering-
would be preferred.
Yeah, so filtering, what I'm more concerned about here is what devices, what can they get access to? We have things called the domain controller. We have multiple domain controllers in the back end that really control everything. And so if those domain controllers go down, we have no phones, we have no internet, we have no printers, we have nothing. So, and those devices are housed in closets here and they're on our internal network, and I don't want anyone to get to those that don't belong there. That concerns me more. A filter we have right now, so that we have a smart pack filter and we also have an extension filter. So what that means is we use a product called Deladeo, just moved over to that today, but we used to use securely. And so essentially what that means is that when a kid takes a device home that's ours, or even when they log into an account that belongs to us, even if they're at their parents' house and they use their mom and dad's MacBook and they log into Chrome, for example, their Wrightstown one, the Deladeo filter picks that up and starts filtering them on that device because it's the account that it's filtering more so than it is the device. It also filters devices when they're on our network because I don't care if they log in or not, if they're here, they need to be filtered. So it's a CIPA compliant filter. It fulfills all of the federal government requirements for filtering. So in other words, they can't access bad websites. But that's very different than accessing our heating system locally or trying to ransom our accounts. You get what I mean? And just being able to get there. And in truth, I'm not worried about our local kids.
For sure.
What normally happens is that if a kid brings a device from outside, that device is getting stuff from anywhere. I have no idea what the security is set up on that particular device. And if that kid gets compromised with that device outside there by a third party that doesn't even live in the United States, and that third party comes in, connects to our devices, and they go like, oh, sweet, I can move around on this network, neat. It's very difficult to control. So a child might be doing it, again, another analogy was like during COVID, you didn't want to bring little children into a home where elderly people lived, right? Because they could bring in lots of bad germs with them over here. Even though they wanted to see grandma and grandpa, it was potentially dangerous to have them do that. And they might not even feel sick, but they are carrying something that could make the other people sick. So it's a very similar situation to that. That's why network access control matters, is that I have an idea to say, like, I don't care where you are, what you're from, or where you came from. If you're not mine, you don't get to go here. That's kind of the idea. And we can also identify who you are and give you quality of service that's over here, completely we can keep you happy so you can watch YouTube and, I don't know, Snapchat the wrestling, whatever, but you can't access our IoT. You get what I'm saying?
Yep.
So that's kind of that's what I'm more worried about internally with this kind of thing, is protecting our assets inside of our network. So hopefully that helps a little bit. I think I went the wrong direction, but that's okay. So cybersecurity was another big one that we had an opportunity for. We had we had nothing, we did not have a product called endpoint detection and response, which was very common for Windows devices in organizations. Windows devices are oftentimes the most vulnerable devices because they interface with everything. It's also the most popular operating system in the world, right? And so it interfaces with everything, which also means that it's also vulnerable to virtually everything. And so we have 192 Windows endpoints that are currently in the district, which would be a laptop, right? So a Windows laptop, or then we have 17 servers that we're managing. None of those had any kind of endpoint detection and response. Luckily, and then the other districts have been negotiating this for years, and it's been very difficult. Thankfully, CISA-7 has worked with another consortium and has gotten state level pricing. Thank God for this, because the pricing that we were able to get for it was like 35, 40, 50, but I can't remember. It's unbelievably cheap. And I paid way more than this in other districts, and most districts are moving over to this. And what it comes with now is not only an endpoint detection response for all those Windows machines and the servers, it also gives you a 24/7, 365 security operations center. And so that group is literally a group of human beings that you're paying for. And when those devices get infected, hopefully this picks up on it and it notifies those people in the security operations center, and those people have an agreement with Matt and me to do certain things to certain devices when they get certain types of notifications. For example, they can isolate a device on the network and keep it away from the places we don't want it to be. If it starts writing drives differently, or acting in a way that it's not supposed to, they can take control of that and access it at a particular time at night. And a lot of times these particular things will happen like at 2:30 in the morning on a Saturday. Trying to sleep at those times, but those people are awake, and so that's kind of the idea before it. So we have actually gotten to that point. We have lots of other things to do in cybersecurity, but this is a major win for us. So all of those devices are now protected in this case. We are looking to, in the future, reducing the number of Windows endpoints we have. I'll probably talk about it in the future, but it would be very nice to be able to use our Chromebooks to be able to access virtual Windows devices for business classes and art classes and things like that, so that we don't have to maintain all of those on site. And kids can use their Chromebook to access a Windows machine while they're at home and continue to work on the fun things that they like to do on Windows machines without having us maintain all that infrastructure here, and then also maintain all of the cybersecurity that's required to maintain that infrastructure. So I'm hoping to reduce that number significantly, not because I don't care about kids. It's actually the opposite. I want them to be able to work on stuff when they're outside of the 42 minutes that they get to be in a computer lab. And I also want us to be able to stay secure. So this is a big deal, and already what you're looking at is our statistics, the number of things that were mitigated in the last 30 days, the types of attacks that we've had already on those particular devices, and this is a very good thing to be able to have those mitigated in a really quick period of time.
So most of those 192 Windows endpoints are all lab computers.
So the 192 endpoints those are just their laptops. So it's basically, it could be in a lab, it's on Sandy's computer right now, it's on Dan's right now, because those are Windows machines. So any laptop that we push out to people in our environment, which are on the internal network especially, those ones have, it's called Sentinel-1 is the product. And so it's a good product. Places like Janesville 2021, their entire school district was ransomed, and the insurance provider forced them to put Sentinel-1 on all the devices afterwards. So for us, it's nice to be able to have it before that happens, because that's generally what the company that we go through for cyber insurance, they would require this to be on there if we did have an incident. They would pay for it for a small period of time, so long as we were negligent, and then we would be forced to pay for it afterwards in order to remain insurable. So this is a good thing. Any other questions about that one? All right, and then the last one, physical security. I don't like this one very much. So we go through this. There's about 182 cameras in the district, 42 doors. This system is not, it's functioning. It's not functioning. I shouldn't say it's not functioning well. It's functioning okay. It all is depending on what you want. That is kind of the idea, right? So it is incredibly low cost right now. It doesn't cost hardly anything for what we have, which is fantastic. It's awesome that we are having very low cost in that. We also have very low support with this particular one. There's no interconnection between our door access and camera access. So they're completely separate systems and they're not co-located in any way, shape, or form. So if there's interesting activity at a door, it doesn't trigger a camera. A camera doesn't care about what the doors are doing. The doors don't care what the cameras are doing. And that's not necessarily optimal as far as security is concerned. So it's super reactive at this point in time, the camera system. So if we have incidents, for example, it's more so to see what happened yesterday than like to figure out how we can work on something now, right? Again, depends on what you're looking for. So is it a big part of student learning? Not necessarily. And part of the reason I haven't made any changes to this one is what you see below. So I have 4 quotes for how to take this into 4 different systems from 3 different companies as to how you could take what we currently have and move them into a single system that would allow you to have door access and cameras in the same system, the cameras to talk to the doors and vice versa, and then also have some like detection, for example, to say, hey, we're in a situation where we're kind of worried about who's in the building. I'd like to be able to identify the person and be able to watch them walk around really quickly, right? The price tag at the lowest would be about $77,000 to do that, and at the highest would be $150,000. That would be spanning over the course of about 5 years, and that is just the labor to move everything in there, and it's just the licensing to get the new product. That's not any new cameras, it's not any new doors, it's not any new wiring. It's literally just software and labor and licensing to get that. So it is a lot of, it's not a small amount of money to look at. So again, that is I wish I could bring you better better news in that particular case. There's also some piecemeal. The reason I have that picture in there is that normally when you have a door access control, it goes back to a centralized board rather than having a board and then 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 a board. There's just boards everywhere. Because I think in this case, it wasn't necessarily, look, this is at the high school, so it wasn't necessarily planned to say, I want all of these happening over here. It's better at the elementary school after the referendum. That's good, because at the referendum, they thought about that and decided to have them go back to a centralized location, which is what you want. You want to be able to have that, but at some of the other places, it's kind of like whenever it got installed, Sometimes the board is above the door, sometimes not, and it makes it very difficult to put this together, if that makes sense. So that's kind of where we are with that part.
With your quotes, no hardware change, it's all software. Is it commercial off-the-shelf software that they have going through, or are they having to do something to integrate specifically with these systems to tie things together?
Good question. So the cameras that we have right now are designed to work with with the camera system that we have right now. So they're not necessarily open source cameras. So the problem with it is trying to take it into another system. You have to buy a license for each one of those for that system to ingest that camera. And so it's not only just, you have to first of all get them active in that new program, then you have to decide what kind of motion sensing you want on every 182 cameras that you want in there, right? You have to decide how long you want them to record, for what time. You get what I'm saying? There's like literally every one of those has to be configured. Once you bring all the doors in, it's the same kind of thing. They have different schedules at different times. So then all that has to be in there. And then what happens is if you decide, hey, I want that camera every time I unlock that door, I want it to record a few seconds beforehand and a few seconds afterwards, so that I always have an example of when someone came in, I can see it, right? That all has to be set up. And so it's a combination of all those things, right? So that's sort of where we are. Does that answer your question, kind of, or not really?
A little, not a whole lot.
I
I just know, like, I work a lot in SCADA systems and stuff,
Yeah,
right?
how
So like,
can
I know
how can
like
clarify
protocols and
more,
stuff.
Alex? Like, so we're looking at Milestone, Verkada, Genetech. I
Okay.
don't know if you're familiar with any of those products at all. Those are 3 of them. Vigilon was another one. I don't think there are any of those, but
Okay.
so the cheapest one at this point in time would be Genetech, and that would be Still pretty much all on site. That's what they use at NWTC. Pretty much all of their satellites are using that particular product. This also, one of the changes that we intend to make, I'm going to talk about this. I think this will be like 5 minutes. I don't need this long. But even the cards that we're using are all different protocols.
Okay.
So some of them are encrypted, some of them are not encrypted. Which is not good, right? So we use probably 50% of them. Like a kid could buy a flipper for $100 and become a teacher, you know, and that way. So it's important for us to manage that. And so some of those things I can fix without a lot of money. We can at least get us onto a card protocol that's similar, one that's encrypted, and I will do that work without doing this part. That all has to be done anyway. So there are things we can do to make it more secure and better. It's just, that's kind of a situation we'll have to think about in the long run. So this one's probably not going to be solved anytime soon.
I just know the one thing too with physical security is it's only as good as your people want it to be. So I know like
Right.
going to high school late at night, stuff like that for different practices and whatnot. There's usually a bottle in the door. You know, they open.
Well, correct, right. So another thing that I'll be looking at this year is that it came up, and I could have put that up here too, is that all the vestibules actually have different, they're all different. So when you go to the high school, there's sometimes a door that can open to this one, and the elementary it's different. So they're all different. And so the idea too is to try to have some level of standardization. The other part is the wiring at the elementary school is pretty solid in the fact that we can tell whether or not a door has been open or not. But at the other buildings, any door that does not have door access, like an actual dash swipe, does not have a door contact closure on it. So there are more doors in the district that when you open them, we don't know if they're open.
Mhm.
And there's no way to know if they're open unless you actually put a door contact closure on them and run a wire to every one of the doors. So when you did the referendum here, that was done at all the elementary doors, which is great. So those are wired appropriately to be able to see, but the middle school and the high school are not in this case. There's only a door. If it has door access, then it has a contact closure. If it doesn't, we have no idea if it's open or not. So that, I hate to bring, that's probably not great news, but so additional updates, we'll go through and try to provide you more updates to finish this up in the third one, and then we'll have an actual, my intent is to have an actual document summarizing all the stuff by November. I'll work with Hardman to be able to distribute to you so you can have, for whatever reason that you would want to have it, but then we're trying to also take action on some of these things the best we can. So, any questions?
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Sorry for that. Verbose.
That's yes.
Let's do it.
All right, anything else for Corey?
Mhm.
All right. Now, our next exciting piece.
Well, I was trying to figure out which joke I was gonna use. First it was gonna be, Corey's PowerPoint was much cooler than mine. And then, if Corey didn't bring all the air out of the room, I might with the budget, so. Pick which one you like, you know? So not that one, this one. Nope, I was right. So, budget. Where's my present button? Slideshow. Here you go. So the governor did sign the 25-27 budget, which is good. We know what's coming. What's maybe not so good is that, you know, all the things that we had hoped for are not included. And, you know, typically that doesn't happen. You know, we don't usually get everything we want. But there were some significant improvements that would have been really good for all K-12 school districts. And, you know, it is what it is, and now we have to decipher it and then try to figure out how we're going to move forward. So I'll spend the first part of this just kind of introducing you again. If you've heard it before, maybe you've heard it once. Just kind of talking about how schools are funded, and then we'll kind of dive into our budget a little bit as well. So where does all of our money come from? You know, largely from local property taxes and state aid from the state. And then we also have, a smaller amount from federal funds. So when we look at local property taxes, we all know that we own property, so we have to pay taxes on that, and most of that money stays in our communities with our local schools. But certain areas are wealthier than others and can raise more money within their local property taxes, and it creates a difference between districts. When we look at the state, then tries to balance that difference between communities by aiding districts, but certain districts are different. So you might have a district like Sturgeon Bay, which would have a lot of vacation homes and maybe not as many kids. They rely more on the local property taxes than the district like Wcsd. I'll find my place here. I feel like I'm stumbling around. So for example, in the state budget, they did not increase the aid amount. So when we look at, I think I'll get to this in a minute, but I kind of look at our revenue limits as a water bottle, right? So this water bottle holds what, 16 ounces of water. And our state aid is, 3/4 of it. And our local property taxes then make up the rest. And so typically what happens each year is the state budget increases the size or the capacity of the water bottle slightly. And typically what they would then do is increase the amount of water in the water bottle each year to kind of try to equal it out. So this year what they did is they increased the size of the water bottle, which is good, but they didn't increase the amount of water that's in a water bottle. So in order to fill that water bottle, we need to fill that in with local property taxes. So we may be facing a situation where local property taxes will increase. So this is a result. So prior to 1993, school boards could levy a tax levy based on what you needed. So if we wanted to add a teacher or add a program, this local school district had control in order to do that. If the community supported it, go ahead, right? But in 1993, they instituted revenue limits, which limits the amount of money that districts can raise between local property taxes and state aid. So basically created the water bottle per se. And the only way to go outside of that is to go to referendum. So you'll see articles with different districts going to what's called an operational referendum. So you can go to a referendum like we did in 2020 that gave us this beautiful building. So that's a construction referendum. You can also do an operational referendum that would say, hey, we've got a lot of IT needs and we'd like community support to help us, iron some of those things out. A lot of districts are successful with that, but some are not. Some try and they're not able to. So that kind of adds to that disparity as well. So every district is different. So that creates a lot of haggling, at the state when we're looking at all the different levers that can be pulled. When we looked at special education aid increases versus high cost special education, and then there's many different nuances in the funding formula because every community is different. I think I did talk about this. So the equalization aid formula designed to try to make things more equal, as it says, to give more aid to districts that have lower property values, to try to make them more equal based on the number of students and the local property values that are in each community. We talked about revenue limits. It was done to limit property taxes back in 1993. We do also get federal funding, That is up for question, I think, is in some areas of the news. We are planning for flat federal funding this year. Hopefully that stays at least at the flat levels. So we get federal funding for special education in food service and also our title programs. So recent challenges, just like in life, you know, our costs are increasing faster than our revenue is. We're not immune to inflation. It's a real thing and it's a real challenge. Costs are increasing, staffing increases and insurance and, you know, technology equipment and things like that. It's all increasing and we are limited in the amount of money that we can raise to make it all work. So we talked a little bit about referendums. You know, and then there's always, you know, debates on what means fair. And I've been told that fair is a 4-letter F word and we shouldn't be saying that. But we also have, you know, disparities with private school vouchers and things like that, which is a whole nother topic that we can get into at some point if we'd like. You know, so I did talk about the water bottle, but so our revenue limit minus state aid equals property taxes, and that then rolls out to the different municipalities after it's set in stone in October.
Just to recap, you
Yep.
said the revenue limit was increased, but the state aid was not.
Correct.
So it allows the opportunity for the.
So,
increase in property
right,
taxes.
so in this case, the final product increases, but this one did not increase. So then in order to fill that in, what does that mean? That means that this would have to increase in order to do that. Now, when you roll out property taxes to each municipality, property values come into that effect as well. So if your property, you know, you look at, you know, you probably heard the term mill rate, you know, which is how much you were intended to pay in taxes per $1,000 of property. You know, if you look at that rate versus last year, if your property value goes up, you know, the mill rate might not change, but the amount of money you're probably going to pay is going to be more because your house is worth more, right? So we have to be good stewards of that as well, but
That's up to the municipality that determines when those mill rate updates are things.
So that is one of the nuances as well. So property values are treated, there's 2 different levels of property value. So you have your assessed value, which is at the local assessment. So you might live in one municipality and Rain lives in a different one. You might assess and he might not. So in order to make that fair, the Department of Revenue equalizes that with a formula. So we get one number in October that says your property value for the whole community is, you know, $1.2 billion or whatever it is. So we don't have control over saying that your house was assessed or yours was not. They take that into consideration and give us one number. Did I want to go the wrong way? What's the wrong way? So changes in the 25-27 budget, $325 per student was written into law the last biennium. As I said, there was no increase to state aid, meaning that those revenue increases, but the state's not chipping in. So the increase would come from local property taxes. We did talk a little bit about special ed funding. The proposal was to move to 60% reimbursement rate on so there's 2 different variables. One would be some certain amount, meaning we're going to put $100 towards this and you can fix your car, right? And, or I can say, I'm going to fix your car and whatever it costs, I'm going to pay for it, right? So I can change the percentage, but if I don't change the money, you're really not doing anything, right? So previous law said 33%. It really came in around 30% because of there wasn't enough money there to reimburse at the full percentage. They did add to the funds, $140 million over 2 years. So we're looking at 38% in year one and 42% in year two. So I would expect those numbers to be slightly lower than that,
So
you know.
I have a question on that
Yep.
because the budget summary that I saw, that I have, right, it says special education, 42%, 25, 26, 45%, 26, 27.
I'm driving around numbers. Okay.
But not, I'm
It's
just,
possible, yeah, it's all new.
but it does say that it's some sufficient though, right?
So I think you might be looking at, are you looking at high cost special education?
No, high cost special education, the budget increases reimbursement from 26 to 50% in 25, 26 and 90% in 26, 27 for public school children with costs exceeding $30,000.
My understanding is it was still some certain, but I'll have to check on that.
Okay. I can send this to you.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, because everything I've read was that it's some certain. So,
Oh, wait a second. Flat funding, which does not adjust for rent, so it is not some sufficient. But it is not some sufficient, but I do have 42 and 26, 20, 25, 26. But again, those numbers mean
right,
little if it's
Right.
not some certain
correct.
or some sufficient.
Right, so that means that the reimbursement rate isn't guaranteed. So the other piece is the way Fund 10 and Fund 27 work together. Fund 27 is our special education costs. We have to record all those costs in a different fund. And then we receive money from the federal government and from the state, but not enough to cover all those costs. So the difference then is transferred from our general fund in order to into the special education fund to balance it. The special education fund has to balance every year. So if the aid from the state increases, that then reduces the transfer amount, which would then create some flexibility in their general fund to do other things. A little convoluted, but that's really the point of increasing that to say 60% some certain is that we would be able to plan on that amount every year. And then that would reduce that transfer amount and create budget flexibility. That would help every district in the state because every public school district that I know of has special education students. Maybe they don't have as many, but we don't have as many as some other districts as well. So that's a different challenge, but it's nice that they were looking at that, but I believe they fell short on where they should be. Okay, so attached to the board documents is the DPI required format. It shows expenses and revenue broken down by fund and also into specific categories that are required by DPI. So if you look at the top, it talks about fund balance, and then you'll see revenue listed by each fund. There's a 3-year breakdown. So 2 years ago would be audited. The second column would be the current year, which at this time was not finished and currently is not finished and is not audited. So I did put the budget amounts in there right now because we're looking preliminary. And then the third column would be the preliminary budget at this point. So that's how to read that document. It is broken down by fund. So when we look at Fund 10 is our general fund, the largest one that we have, we will have a balanced budget. Some of the key factors there were a 2.95 salary increase for staff. We do anticipate that there'll be some type of increase in benefits as well, because that's pretty hard to not have. But our board, you as a board, we cap the amount that we contribute as a district to employee health plans at $21,080. So anything above that is the employee's responsibility. They've been successful in using that as a negotiating tactic in the past. I don't know how much longer that's going to happen. A couple years ago, we did increase that cap $1,000. So not anticipating that we have to increase that cap right now, but keep that on your radar that we may have to do that as our costs increase. One of the other big things is we're very excited to bring in 4K, moving to 4 days a week. We did increase staff in order to do that. Shout out to Sarah Nelson for making that happen. And then we're also working to control costs in our other areas as well. We'll have to make that happen.
And that change to 4 days a week doesn't adjust the state funding and cost per student, right?
No, it's still 4K students are counted at 0.6, 60%. We get 60% of that FTE for those kids. You know, the goal then is to bring them in because we feel like once they're here, they'll stay. So there's hope that at some point the federal or the state funding model will recognize that if we're doing, you know, full-time 4K, that we get a higher percentage because, you know, it's not a half-day program really anymore. And I don't know how many kids are viewing 4K as an option right now. It's not required, but I would say that I think most kids come to 4K, right? But in some form. So our special education fund is Fund 27, about $2.2 million. I will need to address the increases in our budget. That wasn't finalized when I put this together, but as I said earlier, we're anticipating flat federal dollars. But again, student needs are increasing. We're seeing a lot more behavior issues and just students with more needs. So we work really hard to control our alternate placements, meaning that we arrange for a student to attend school somewhere else. And that is not in another public school district, but in a facility that is not cheap. So we try to eliminate, or not eliminate that, but control that or reduce that as much as we can. We did incorporate the, we called it a behavior focused classroom, but I don't know I can't remember what the official name is for it now, but really trying to,
Rise.
Yeah,
Rise.
Rise. So to really try to provide another step, you know, to allow kids to kind of move in and out so that if a kid can't be here in the regular classroom, there's something in between here and full-time alternate placement, which costs a lot of money per day.
Or transition.
Right, and to bring them to transition back in as well to try to reduce costs on both ends, you know. And I think it's been very successful. I don't have numbers for you on
I know
that.
we transitioned to back full time.
Yeah, so. Let's see. Fund 39 is our debt service fund. So that's to pay back the debt related to the 2020 referendum. We're not recommending a debt defeasance at this point. So you'll see a balance, the difference between revenue and expenditures. We levy for a debt payment in September and in March. So that's outside of the fiscal year. So we need to have that balance in order to make that September payment because that's before the next levy. That's why there's a difference there. Okay. 146 is a capital improvement fund. So that's it's an improvement trust. So years ago in 2018, we started this fund with I think $500 maybe. And the fund had to sit for 5 years before we could spend any dollars out of it. So we are free to spend dollars out of it now. We can spend dollars off of a 10-year capital plan. We are working to update that capital plan. We had one in 2018 when we approved this, but it needs to be updated. before we can start spending dollars out of it. So we're planning to present that to you at the annual meeting. I've worked with Corey and Craig Hayes and Chris Knapp on that as well. We'll bring in Katie Huey for the food service as well, and then talk as a full admin team about it as well, about different needs that that we foresee over the next 10 years, which are a lot. You know, so don't anticipate that we'll be able to pay for all of those things, but those are things that we see that probably should be updated within the next 10 years. A couple of the hot items that we are already earmarking potentially to spend would be in summer of 2026, the high school track needs to be resurfaced. Chris has told me we've got 1, maybe 2 years out left on that track, and if we wait longer than that, it will have to be ground down and rebuilt, which would be a much larger cost. So, and then there's some roofing projects that need to happen at the high school. So, looking to spend, you know, what is that, $720,000, you know, of those dollars probably next summer. So,
How do we continue to grow this budget?
so if there are dollars left over at the end of the fiscal year, we can make a transfer from Fund 10 to Fund 46.
Okay.
When in the years leading up to that 5-year wait, we did have some dollars that we were able to put in there, and then we invest those funds, which has been pretty good for us. We don't typically have a lot of dollars left over right now. Over the last couple of years, it's been a little less. But we'll be looking at, we have to make if there is a transfer, we'll have to make that before the end of July in order to do it. So we'll finish closing the books, and then if there's anything there, I don't anticipate much if there is anything at this point. Food service, Fund 50, that's a separate entity, so they have their own fund balance. I always say that my goal is not to make money in food service, but I also don't want to lose money. So I want them to be self-sufficient. We're always working to sustain or increase participation. So we're estimating about $735,000 out of food service. That's including all the meals and equipment, salaries, benefits, all that kind of stuff that happens out of food service. So they did most of the kitchen refresh happened in the referendum. So I'm not anticipating a ton of equipment that needs to be updated at that point, but I'm sure there'll be some things. There's always an oven that's not working or something that would benefit them to be a little more efficient. And then Fund 80 is our last fund, community service fund that houses our wellness center, our school resource officer, middle school sports, and our community health worker. So we have about $500,000 in there. So from there, what's next? So we've talked about the preliminary budget. You've got the document. We'll recommend that you approve a preliminary budget. That's not saying it's etched in stone. It's based on estimates, but it really allows us to start the fiscal year. We're going to have our audit is every year we have an audit. It's usually the first week in August. So independent auditors come in, and I like to say that it's kind of like taking all of your laundry and throwing it out in the front yard and having everyone look at it. They don't look at everything, but they do go through a fair amount of stuff and make sure that everything's on the up and up. Then we will have an annual meeting, which is September 24th. And then we finally start getting the variables that we need to actually calculate our revenue limit, which is our state aid certification, and then our property value certification that I talked about earlier. So much of the work is kind of backwards because we have to estimate a lot until right at the end, and then we have to plug everything in and make adjustments as possible, as quickly as possible for approval at the October 22nd meeting because we do have to levy by, I think it's November 7th, I want to say. So that's all I had prepared. Questions on that? And if you want to look through that document, if you have questions over the next couple of weeks, feel free to reach out to
You
me.
just go back one second.
Yeah. Any questions on anything I talked about?
Mhm.
Okay.
Thank you.
Feel free to reach out if you have questions. We'll be talking about this a lot over the next couple of months, so don't feel like you have to eat the elephant all at once.
All right, sit on questions. Next. The old policy updates, 33-2 first read, so, each of you has printed copies, you also have, beforehand, access to the electronic versions on this, so.
So one thing I did is, so in the policy update, there was like a summary document. So, and I apologize, this PowerPoint's even worse than the last one, but I just kind of took it and tried to separate it out into slides. I didn't know how you wanted to go through this, but it really kind of has some notes from Neola about, why they're changing certain things. So like this first one, they're including options related to closed session, virtual attendance by board members, along with a drafting note. So I can send this to you. I can send you the document as well, or it is out on board docs in the policy piece. I think I have to go to draft and then the 33-2, it was.
That's the one with the attached.
Yes, it was this one here.
So we have access to that.
Yeah, so
Yes.
did you see how?
I think so.
Cool.
Policies.
Yeah, and you have to
Awesome.
drop down with the carrot on it.
The drop down says draft on the right side.
Okay.
Draft.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Where did I find that? So I can send, maybe it was a link on here. I'll find it and send it. I'll send you this PowerPoint, and I'll also send that document to you. Yeah, waste your time while clicking around.
So, in the packet that I gave you, like that first one, it's all struck out.
Yeah.
So it's being replaced. So we rescinded policy 4162 up here in the code.
Mhm.
It's getting renumbered to 8601.
Mhm.
So essentially this whole thing becoming policy number, but the way that goes through the approval process in Neola, you're gonna get this for a review. You're gonna go, why are we
Got it.
not approving this whole policy? So make sure up on the top of that code section, it'll have a little bit of a slight description of what's happening with it. And like that one specifically, those being rescinded and then, remembered.
And you'll see some policies have options in them,
Mhm.
and things were selected. I believe Ron went through those. I don't know if he went through them with Tim, but I believe he's the one that made the selections. So when I clicked on it, it was already done. So
So when I had talked to Tim at Neola, he had said, again, the same applies as what the last policy we approved. He said nothing stands out that was selected, different from many other school districts. So
I think that was the only question I had as I went through was like the things that were seen struck out
Mhm.
and then highlighted in green were changes either Neola is recommending or Ron already made with them.
Well, typically, if Ron made a selection, we'll see A, B, C, and D, and then an X in the boxes.
Okay,
That's
And then-
what Ron selected.
but any of like this language change is them, is
Yeah,
Yeah, that would
Neola.
be Neola saying this is
Okay.
better verbiage.
So if you go to policy, 3120.08, it's like the third one in. Looks at the. Yeah,
Mhm.
so you see how that, there's green boxes there, and there's selections that are struck out.
Yep,
And then there's the one that was chosen. So it's showing you the other options that were available there. And then the non-stricken is what we chose
Mhm.
in that green portion.
Okay.
That,
we chose that, who's we?
Well, Tim does make suggestions with the administrators, so it's kind of across the board with the schools that they represent, or that purchases Neola policies.
Okay,
So it's kind of both of them go through. And then if there's any questions that the administrator has, then Tim answers those questions and then makes a selection. And then ultimately, then the selections come to the board.
Yeah.
So if we're talking about this tonight, do you know that
Yeah.
Craig had, some thoughts about this one?
by the way,
I did send this one to Craig.
okay,
So yeah, so if we're gonna be looking at it, like I know the one that says the activities athletic director will conduct candidates and conduct interviews, which will include another member of the administration. That gets really hard for him. So if he's gonna be hiring JV one,
Yeah.
you know, softball assistant, he's like, do I really need to make sure I have another administrator on that team? Now, if he's hiring something for a varsity head coach position, that's a little bit different, right? So he was a little concerned about that one being marked, as our current policy that we have does not have that. There needs to be another administrator on the team.
okay.
But it doesn't differentiate between sports either, and our current policy doesn't either, I don't believe.
No, but
So-
it basically gives him free reign to hire as he sees. fit.
Yeah.
So some of his autonomy, I think, would be, the ability to do it as fast as he probably can turn around and do it will be different if he has to make sure that there's another administrator who can sit on that team.
That stood out to me. The other one that stood out to me is
Are you switching policies? I had a thought about this one though too, so by striking through this first one, we're saying like nothing has to be posted in regards to extracurricular activities?
When I was like a freshman coach, that position was never posted publicly
There was no like
anywhere.
a letter, you didn't have to submit anything, the activities director can just pluck whoever they want in those positions? Is that what we're saying?
which selection are you reading?
The very top one.
Top.
So it struck through those first two options.
Yep.
I guess I was thinking that it would follow the posting of it, but it says appropriate locations. I was thinking maybe it meant there weren't several locations.
Oh,
I guess I was just foreseeing
So it's,
problems. If things are not posted and
no, I agree. It should-
positions are
it
just
should be
given.
posted. That should be in our policy.
I mean, whatever, and then the athletic activities director fulfills how they see fit, but I do think we can't just like hand out positions. I think there should be a proper
Correct.
posting of
So-
something.
with these two, Tim said it would be customary and it's within what we already paid for. He will come in and take us through all of these. So that he is the one that did it last time.
Yeah,
He'll sit in front of us and then it's like, we went through literally policy after policy. and I was
So-
like,
Which is
questions?
tedious.
is
It's
that what
super
we're gonna
tedious,
do in
but-
another
Well, I'm
workshop?
just
Is that what
saying
we're gonna do on the
that if-
23rd?
It might be beneficial to do that because he has the background. No, it was like a workshop, yeah. Actually, it was this.
Or, I mean, I just feel like in this case, Craig should be here
Yeah.
to give
But
some
right, but
feedback for
then
like,
he could too speak to like the legal part of it, why some of these were chosen. or cost.
And legal or not, I guess I'm just thinking like kind of a safety piece, right? Like I don't want anyone to come in.
Right.
At least we can say, well, it was posted and the best qualified person was selected or whatever, you know, but if you don't ever post, I think you're gonna run into issues.
Yep.
Can I jump in for a second?
Yeah.
So it's pretty typical for districts, when there's any position co-curricular, to post it in some way, shape or form. Sometimes it's social media, sometimes it's through like regular postings for like jobs. But it's typical for that to be out there for like the time. Sometimes that time is short and it just basically says, if you are interested, contact the activities director. As far as the phrasing and the one that's X there, one workaround to that is you could say that the activities or athletic director will vet candidates and consult with the administrative team, or may consult with the administrative team, because in practice, that's what happens often. So my former AD would say, hey, just so you know, we need a softball, JV2 coach. I'm interviewing this person and this person. I'll let you know how it goes. Great. And then we might have a conversation, but that person does have that autonomy to do that, but it's still part of a team decision. And that way you give the autonomy, but you also have that support that's there from the rest of the.
I don't have a problem doing that. I do have a problem if we have a policy that doesn't say that something has to get posted, I think. Or if there's a superseding policy that says all jobs within the district have to get posted. I'm okay with that too.
I mean, to that point, like I do believe most of it is probably posted more on like social media. Because a lot of them will not know to go to like WeCan, which is like the
Correct.
the normal
Right.
educational.
Right. Usually
Yeah.
talk about
It has to be
doesn't matter where
advertised
it's posted. I just
somewhere.
want it.
I would agree, Jason, that it needs to
More
be somewhere, it has to be
CYA.
that everybody has an opportunity to realize that there's a position that's open.
Well, I mean, okay, so those are concerns with this. How are we tackling all these then? Are we just,
We have options on how we want to go about it. I think there's one specific ones that we could probably quickly go through, and say, okay, well, great, this one got rescinded, this one was language changed, and narrow that down before we say, okay, we need to have Tim come in and Craig come in and to go through some of these detailed ones, be specifically like.
Well, they'll just come in for the updates and then like last step, we don't have to go through each one. He'll just take questions. So it doesn't have to be, and it's no additional cost. So it's not something special. It's within.
So do we just want to go through, do we want to just go through and just, if we have questions on any of these, just call them out?
Yeah, I mean, there's like,
feels like a lot.
It is
to be
not.
honest, like, you look at 5505, there's no selections, it's changed, that policy changed. Either we don't adopt it or.
I don't know.
We're looking at, the one that I had question on, educational outcome and goal expectations.
Can you give me a number or what?
I'm in the board docs.
Yeah.
It's the third one.
2131.
Yes, 2131. The changes that were made. Hmong Americans are Asian Americans. Why are we calling out a culture? I disagree with that because they are Asian Americans.
So I think I remember seeing that on,
You had it up there, 2131, but I remember reading it too. I was like, what?
Okay, clear.
I haven't found it yet though.
Oh, I don't think they're calling them out. I think they're adding them as a tool.
so
But they are.
So they're-
I disagree with
their note said this policy is updated to include additional language added by the 2023 Wisconsin Act 266, which amends Wisconsin State Statute 11801 to include references to Hmong Americans and Asian Americans. Act 266 does not contain specific implementation date. Accordingly, this will need to be incorporated into curriculum.
people of the Hmong culture are Asian Americans. Or they're from the continent of Asia. So I'm just wondering why we're specifying a culture. Because Hmong is a culture. It's not a it's a cultural, it's not like
I so hear you, but are they changing the policy because Wisconsin, because of the
Yeah.
Wisconsin, it's like we're trying to align to the language that they've
Okay.
used, is
And
what
then-
I was
and
guessing from that.
it just, I'm not a fan of it, but whatever. And then American Indians, shouldn't that be like indigenous or Native Americans?
I do not know the proper.
And maybe that's a question for Tim, but I mean, I believe that they're trying to align that law, that language to the law, and it sounds like they're making curricular changes as well. So.
And I have no problem with that. I'm just saying, I don't know if I don't know that it's proper that I don't know. It seems like we're singling out a culture to me. And
That's specifically the language used in the Wisconsin statute
Okay.
up there. Yeah.
Alright.
Well,
American
that's-
Indians, Black
that's a lot of-
Americans, Hispanics, Hmong Americans, and
It's a
Asian
lot of the
Americans.
policy.
I think that's part of the reason why we pay for Neola, because
Mhm.
then they vet that piece
They
and then they
filter.
say, this is what it should say, and not to say that your opinion is wrong.
No, I'm just saying, like, I'm all for being all inclusive. I just,
You're working at the wrong
It just
level of
seems
government
like we're-
here.
it seems like we're
This is-
singling out a
Yeah,
culture.
we're on
we
the
don't
local
know.
Yeah, this is a state legislative.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a specific terminology used in that statute.
But does that have to reflect in our policy? I don't know. Okay.
I mean, so for clarity, right, it doesn't, but then it's not on the Neola adopted policy.
It just struck me as odd because I'm like, that's redundant.
And I think to the state statute point, like, a lot of these, when their legal team goes through and use that, they're updating.
Yeah, that's fine.
Updating to the state statutes.
As long as we're not negatively just singling out a culture, that's okay. Then I'm okay.
Well, they would just allow that.
Well, but you know what I'm saying? Well,
Yeah,
if the state statute does something.
Yeah.
then we just
well,
take
that
it.
we have to follow, right?
So like, essentially that one had language change in it, there's no options in it, that's basically notifying us of the change in that policy.
So I kind of feel like not to go backwards, but now that I saw what Dan just shared, I want to go back to
Kind of.
get the
I know, I
summary
was
one
thinking
and
the same.
like hit pause on this. Because I want to make sure, like, I just want to double check myself now that I see that the summary was there, that I am, yeah.
And this
Right.
is
That's
part
my
of the-
feeling.
This is part of the first read.
It
right?
is, it's only the first read,
Yeah.
so we'd look at bringing it back in 2 weeks, and we can look at having Tim there to answer questions, and we can always approve with changes, you know, to say, hey, we want to select this option and that option, so we give direction to Tim and us to then implement that,
Mhm.
so.
I guess the ask that I would have from this group is, for our next meeting, you know, if there's ones that we can scope out of that question to kind of like, okay, here's the ones I have no questions on because it was just wording changes.
Yep.
And then here's the ones that we
I have
have.
some
Well, we
questions.
could, we could too, if we wanted to, create a Google Doc and just start placing our questions under the specific.
Each policy
codes.
number.
Or policy numbers, yeah.
We could do that too.
Or sections is what I meant to say. And then we could just,
Is that
That way
a
we could
document to
organize
make
them.
sure it's publicly posted then with the next agenda? I'm sure.
it wouldn't even have to be publicly posted, we could just send them to Tim Bannock. For responses too. And then that would speed up the whole process.
Right, because then Tim
For
would
all of
have.
us.
Yeah, I'm just thinking if
Questions ahead of
we're
time.
working together in a document that's kind of board business or board discussion happening, I think that'd be a public document then at some point.
Yeah, does that constitute a?
It's, as long as it's not a conversation, it just has to be posted questions for Tim. You would have to respond differently.
Yeah, we're not making a decision on
Yeah,
that, it's
we're
just the questions,
Okay.
compilation of questions, right?
Can we make that open to our administrative team? too?
Yeah. Because I was just looking at 7540.05 and wondering, Sarah, if you had any thoughts on that.
7.
The assistive technology. I know.
And I'm gonna be super honest, I have not read.
Yeah, but that, we would appreciate your feedback. Like that would be one I would.
Yeah.
Be curious what you have to say.
Was that the one with all the AI stuff in it?
Assistive technologies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
This is what.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And there's a social media one too.
This is one of the students with disabilities.
No, there's a different one that's got a whole bunch of things around AI.
Is that this one?
It's a whole other section.
7540.
Right here.
Yeah,
Yeah, this one
I
here,
was
550.
sure
is
it
the one I
was
was
missing or
talking about.
including.
It's got a whole new section specifically about the use of AI and natural language processing for school work. I think that's one we
Do
want to
we
spend
have a
time.
district policy on AI?
That's why it's all green.
Yeah.
It's being
no, we
created.
do not.
So I think that's one we'd
We
want
should
to.
have one, because they're all doing it.
Well, I'm gonna have some time to look at these a little closer.
Yeah, there's a social media one too. I don't love
Yeah,
some
I
of the
went through all
language.
these
I'm like,
in
what?
different districts when we adopted Neola, and then it'd be interesting to look at.
Yeah, the 7544 Corey, if there's anything too,
Is the
or any of
use-
the admins on the social media stuff.
So Neola originally put out an AI one, and they had just an option that basically said it needed to comply with other policies. I'm not seeing the AI one here. I see assistive tech, I see social media, and many others.
5505, is that what you're looking at?
5505 was
Oh,
one.
academic, okay.
Yeah.
Right, perfect.
Academic honesty.
And those two went to, okay, so do we have 7540.08 in our current policies?
No. I think that's why it's on here.
Yeah,
I don't see 7540.08.
What at 08? Oh, no.
That is referenced in 5505. I just
There's a
want to
lot
put
of
this in, so it's
references,
kind
and
of
I'm
like,
like, what, I don't.
the AI policy is .08.
yeah, I think because
References,
it wasn't checked
so
and
we-
it's scratched out. So I don't think we
So we
have
don't have that
75. Yeah.
Okay.
So we
Those
probably
two go
want
in the
hand in
old
hand. Yeah.
packet, those two go together, which is why it's a good idea to read them together, decide what you're gonna do.
Yeah.
So
So let's say, can we get a look at that?
We do have 7540.
We do? Okay.
Yeah,
and is that, when we click that, does it just say, is it blanket that basically says everything?
the only policies we don't have would be lined completely through. So I don't
So
think,
also references in their policy.
So
Several more
that was the
policies.
point of this is that, so
Yeah.
there should have been another option in here, which we like, a number of districts have gone through this, and it's basically said like, we're not gonna have a separate AI policy. The AI policy is going to say, AI must be used to comply with all other policies. And stop there, because then you can look at how it's used in academic policy, and how it's used in social media, and how it's used in whatever, and put those in the appropriate policies, rather than like, here's how the internet's gonna be used in everything.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? You kind of, so that you don't have to then try to make this policy comply with all of the other ones, just focus on academic honesty, make sure that's good, and it has an AI aspect. Sure that- You get what I'm saying? Rather than
Yeah.
trying to make this then turn into all of the other things. And that was one of the, so when we included that in a different district, we didn't limit it to these ones. Simply because it should
You wanted to be a
be used to
catch-all.
comply with every other one that it's possible to the imagination to be able to use in everyday changes, and thus it could be possible to be non-compliant with some of the other different possibilities. So anyway, just a thought. So if we're going through those two together, it might be better just to make this one really broad that says can't be used to break any other policies.
well, just to be clear, this is their policy. There are no options to select, or they would be on here as an update. So there is
but
no
hold on, though.
altering to this.
Is this an update, or is this what Dan pulled up what's currently published?
This is
So
currently
This is not,
what we
this
have.
is
There's
not.
not an update to the.
Don't change on that.
Right, so when this was originally adopted, I believe, it would have had options for you to
Oh.
choose. And this was one of the options to choose, where you could have said, well, these are the only ones I really care if AI applies to. Do you know what I'm saying? Or it could have been more general. Right now, we have a published one, so I'm sorry to open it up too far. I believe that when this first came out, there were a couple of options where you could say, blanket the whole thing, choose a couple of them, or whatever. That's all I was thinking.
Okay.
because it's referenced very often in academic dishonesty, or sorry, academic honesty rather.
Yep.
And that's what a lot of people were concerned about at first, but there's lots more to be concerned about than just academic. Just
So at this point, I think I'd probably best one if we get a Google Doc created, put questions in there, questions on it. Admin teams to probably look through some of our.
Can we have you just create a Google Doc and put it somewhere in a drive that we can all add that?
I can share it.
With the board and the administrators, so
Yes.
any notes they have or questions on any of these policies, they can just pop them in there under each policy number. Is that what you're?
Yeah.
Makes sense? Okay.
That would be easy.
I'm not looking for more work. At the same time,
Sorry.
in our unique situation, I'm wondering whether or not, as we have Sarah moving into her new role
Yeah.
and Angie moving into her new role, and I'm still somewhat new with lots of new principles, is this a situation where like we could somewhat divvy it? I'm not saying that I would choose what the social media one would be, like one of us as a director gets to read that and kind of goes through and says
Yeah.
like, okay, I'll provide some suggestions and you take them or not take them, you know what I mean? But at least
I think it's just questions. I think
Okay.
it's
And this
going
is just
through
questions.
just questions.
and saying, if you have a question on the policy, put that
The
on there.
question and then that's okay.
That's your-
And we can have Tim come in
Or-
and just address
Yeah.
all of our
We
questions.
could just.
Or if it doesn't pertain to you or your specialty area, then
That's what I
We
was
don't
gonna
need to,
say,
like,
is like, okay.
social
let's-
media
let's do that.
technology,
Just going through all of
services.
these policies,
Yeah.
that's our job.
Correct. My thought was though, okay, so if Sarah has obviously academic honesty, probably teaching and learning director should have some thoughts on that, right? Assistive technology, that probably would be largely Angie and possibly me, right? Because that is largely for students that need assistance through special education, right? So could we divvy them up and say,
for sure.
we are definitely going to have the directors read them also. They can't have time to read every single one of them, but let's put an assignment to say, Corey, you have to read these three because they are very important probably to you. And Sarah, make sure you read these ones. And Dan, these are business ones. And you know what I mean? Or something like
There's
that.
a
Of course,
very
the board has to
hefty
read all of
food
them,
service
approve all of them, but perhaps they could be divided a little bit in absence of a superintendent.
I think that's a great idea. I would be in favor.
We have an admin meeting on Monday.
It's gonna be an 18-hour meeting.
It's gonna be a long one.
Send me a few text messages. I'm in the mountains.
Oh, yeah.
Just tell me which ones I need to read. When my kids go to sleep, I'll get my camping
Do you-
light out and I'll start reading.
We have some paper copies. Would you like to?
So it's not, I can do that. I can.
No, you're going on vacation.
I can.
No, don't work on
The kids
vacation.
still sleep on vacation.
But that's not to say that you have to have these.
This is just first read, like,
Yeah.
no, yeah, there's no,
And there's nothing that says that the second read has to happen at a specific time frame of the first read.
No. Or that we have to approve it. Yeah,
But my point is,
Because-
I think Corey can take his vacation. Vacation.
Oh, yeah.
I'm being a little facetious, but I
I
guess
know that, but-
in a previous district, I don't want to necessarily, let's put it this way, if I'm in a position where I may have to help out with enforcing that policy, it is sometimes helpful to have a thought about what policy gets put in place.
This is 100%, that, what I'm saying is, I don't think we should put a constraint on you to say it has to be
Oh,
done
sure,
by
sure,
next
I'm
week,
with you. I'm
because,
sorry, yeah. No, I'm with you.
yeah. I think we can come up with a reasonable time that we'll have to have this reviewed by. And I'm okay if it's,
August and
sure.
July.
I think
Because ultimately, these policies exist. We would just be confirming
Yeah,
and changing to
updating
match new Neola's phrase.
Absolutely.
So it's not like there's any gap or anything like that. You just want to
Yeah, and
clarify.
some of the policies are quick because they
Yeah.
have very limited green.
Yeah,
You know, and others are.
I mean, that one changed the policy number. The other
Yeah.
one, it changed,
So
more
we-
Americans and Asian Americans.
And I
We could
should
bring
know
this,
this already, but are everyone that's in this update, they're already existing. I know that Neola has them, but you don't always have to adopt everything that Neola has. So in our situation, everything here is just an update of currently existing things. It's not like this is a brand new policy that we
Right.
never yet adopted. Is that accurate?
That is,
Yeah. that's what I was
Okay,
just-
fair. So I want to make sure we're on I'm on the same page as you are, is that these aren't an adoption of new policies. It's look at some of the changes.
yeah, typically these are done. We're kind of catching up.
Sure.
It seems like so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
So
Makes sense.
this is the catch up.
So do we want to bring this back at the August workshop and see if Tim could be there?
I
And
think that
then-
makes sense.
To be honest, I think we want to bring Tim on at the next board meeting, see what we can get through, and then balance at the workshop.
Well, just wait though,
So,
because if we have a document with questions for him, potentially that could just get sent to him. And
We don't
he
need
could
him to come
possibly
in.
even just give a
Because the
written
next board
response.
meeting is in 2 weeks.
I mean, the
If he
Well-
gives a written response, like if I have 7 questions, I read his response and I read the summary and I go, oh, okay. I don't need him to come here and then re-explain to me what he sent to me and he. Does that make sense?
Can we identify by the next meeting which ones we're good with? Get them second read, move them on, and then the ones that we have questions on our table. So we can maybe eliminate some out of this bunch,
Yeah,
So we're making progress.
so we can at least make a little progress.
Yeah,
like 4120.
Pretty straightforward, right? Like, we'll look at
yeah.
what you compiled in, that's a quick
Yeah.
one.
Mhm.
so we could create, so we'll create a list and we'll look to approve certain policies in this update in 2 weeks. And then the ones that are not approved, we'll bring those to the August workshop and potentially have Tim at that meeting to help us walk through those, and then we will approve those at the August regular meeting.
Yeah, that sounds good.
On the plan?
I agree.
I like that.
Concur?
Always lots
So
of-
quiet over there.
So I'm hanging in there.
We're almost there.
Yeah.
So
We're on to the last.
I will send you, that PowerPoint and that document and then,
Perfect.
then we'll create a.
So I'm not looking anywhere in here for that, your PowerPoint.
Correct.
You'll
I
send
saw,
it?
yeah, yep.
Okay.
You'll email it.
I will find that and send that to you.
That was helpful. Thank you for doing that.
Well,
Feel better about this.
Clear as mud on what we're doing?
Clear as mud.
Just kidding.
Oh, clearer than mud. Clearer.
You got it.
Clear's the Fox River.
All right. Any other questions on the Neola policy?
Let's see what we can get through for 2 weeks from now, and we'll come back and revisit the rest.
Yeah.
Yep.
Academic standards.
All right, next agenda item. Dun, 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 dun.
Academic standards.
Academic
So-
standards.
So the state has the Wisconsin academic standards that all public schools have to follow in whatever content area that you're teaching. If you go into any of these, you're going to see that they are very, very in-depth. There's a lot of them, especially if you get into like ELA. It's next to impossible to possibly teach all of that, right? So what we really work on is coming up with like those essential standards of like, what are our power standards? What are those standards that every student has to have non-negotiable in order to be successful in the next grade? So what do they need in 8th grade in order to be successful in 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and so on? So you can go through, you can look at all of them. This is all of the standards. There's even some classes like that we don't teach, like we don't necessarily teach dance, but you'll see that there are standards for dance. So you can go in, you can look at them. A couple of them have been updated from last year to this year. So those are updated links in there as well.
Do we have what changed between the updated ones or no?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay, no worries.
You don't care.
I mean,
I don't care.
And it was like, I mean, it's not that it's not important, but it
No.
was like, marketing management, and, you know, worship, like. Yeah,
That's
I
what
don't
I'm up into.
know
Yeah,
what
there's
was
a lot in
changed
there.
in those. But one of the only other things to kind of like mention is when you see like, there'll be like English language arts, and then there'll be essential elements, English language arts. There is a difference between those. The ELA ones are like what the state standards are for everybody who's taking like the forward exam, which is the state assessment. Then the essential elements are what the students who are taking the alternative, which is the DLM, those are the standards that those students develop. Those are normally the students who, are, IB and things like that. So there are sometimes different sets of standards, and that would be why based on, the student needs and where they're developing. So every year you just have to be aware that there are state standards and that we follow them, in Great Star. So.
And it's your responsibility now as
That's
the
my
director of curriculum to
responsibility,
make sure we're following.
Mhm.
The
Awesome.
big ones were usually highlighted, like Act 20. You usually know what's changing and,
Yeah, so in this one, like, and again, they weren't any, like, nothing changed in the core subject areas.
so are these posted anywhere on our website, like our school
This
website?
will get posted now that we talked about it, so the academic standards should get posted there. And again, you can just go, if you are, have trouble sleeping, you can go on and you can start reading some of them. Some of them
Is there
are
any
individual,
standards on tape?
yes.
You're gonna do the voiceover too?
Some of them you'll see
More
that they're
efficient.
like, yeah, grade bands, so it might be, you might be looking at something that's like 6, 8. Then you have to distinguish like, okay, what are we teaching in 6th grade and how does that grow? And then if you look at like the ELA ones, they're going to be grade specific. This is what you have to teach in kindergarten, this is what you have to teach in 1st grade. And then some of them are, like I said, are bands.
So essentially, this is what the teachers follow.
Okay,
For
this even
each
has the
grade level,
years.
each-
that they ran this stuff
Yeah.
in.
But the challenge is you're not teaching them all. So it's, what do you need to know? I think of math right away. What do you need to know in algebra in order to move on?
Yeah.
Versus what's nice to know. For a ELA teacher, it's nice to know like grammar. You don't need to know certain parts of grammar.
Yeah.
My former colleagues would hate me saying.
I can-
Very, very true. We don't need to know all, we don't have time to cover everything, so we have to decide like what is most essential for us to cover. And so you start with your state standards, each class should really, or building will have like their essential standards, and then each class and each course would have those listed. So as far as like publishing that or seeing that, at some point we would want to be able to say, yes, here are all the academic standards. Here's what's most important to us here in Wrightstown. And here's how each of those classes.
Yes, that would be perfect. Now that, we don't have.
That we don't have.
That's,
So
I think,
that
the vision
would be
down the road.
amazing.
That we're going to be working toward that.
Good.
So the elementary school just started out with some of their standards-based report card.
Yep.
So we did some work on figuring out like, all right, so what are those essential standards? Like what does every 1st grader need to know in order to be set up for success to get into 2nd grade?
Mhm.
And so through math and ELA, we did that work, going through all the standards and figuring what that is. We clustered some of them together. So some of the standards, you can kind of put together. So let's say it's, author's point of view. All right, well, you might not just put author's point of view, you might also put like inferencing with that for, for something like that. Like, all right, can you make an inference of what the author is trying to tell you? Different things like that. So, that is work that we will look to do, like that will be coming in like probably like a 5-year plan. First, we're going to do like a resource audit. What are we even using to teach?
Mhm.
Is it successful? Is it working for us? Are we all on the same page? Are we not on the same page? And are they actually teaching the standards? So when you hear like, what's the curriculum that we teach? The curriculum that we teach is standards.
Standards.
We use resources to teach the standards. So sometimes people use it interchangeably. We don't buy your curriculum.
Yeah.
Our curriculum is right here in these state standards. What we teach is with the resources help us teach those standards, which is what drives our instruction. It goes all around in assessments and things like that.
Very excited to have you on board.
Thank you. So got some work to do.
So we'd look to put this on the agenda in 2 weeks and then have you approve it, and then we would update that on the website.
So we're just approving that we align to the Wisconsin state
Yes.
standards.
Yes,
Oh,
it's very, this should be an easy
It's an
one.
easy one.
okay.
It seems weird. I mean, we have to do it, but apparently they need our approval.
All right.
But wanted to bring it to you so that there's some
Awesome, thanks.
questions and wanted to go through it.
All right. That concludes all of our agenda items.
All right. Motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
8:34.
I know, we don't. I'm going to encourage them. I think we're gonna.
Is that